Hey guys, welcome back to Pulp Culture Curiosities. I almost forgot the name. We were just talking about not being used to it. This is episode 5. This is the podcast where I force one of my friends to sit in the closet recording room, and usually I'm just talking to them about. They have to listen to me as I talk about whatever my hyperfixation of the week is. We're doing it slightly different because you actually have most of the tea for this week.
I have all the information right up here, I think.
We're going back to
2003.
2003. We need can I get the lights to flash, I wonder? Lights.
Side note, the 20th anniversary for America's Next Top Model, I believe, is May 25th, so it just happened a few days ago, so
Woo!
Shout out to that. Shout out to America's Next Top Model, or May 20th, one of those days. But
there we go.
Yay!
We're going back in time!
What?
It's happening! Woo!
Insert royalty-free TARDIS music here.
So... we're just always going back in time.
Oh no, we're going too far.
We're going too far in time. No!
We passed our births.
It doesn't really get great 0 to 60 this TARDIS, so it's just a slow roll. We're gonna just start in 2003 and then just kind of do a drive through the history of America's Next Top Model, which is what we're talking about. America's Next Top Model is a lot.
It is, going back, at first when you watch it, you're like, oh, this is interesting. But then you read stories and watch the Oliver Twixt interviews or the interviews with, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but Jessica Kobeissi. She's a photographer who has reacted to a lot of photo shoots, and she's actually done a few interviews. And then also watching Luxeria reacting, and you're just kind of like, oh, this is very problematic. Don't do that.
Then it's interesting in a different way. Because you're like, yikes.
And you're like, oh, wait, this storyline is problematic. This is problematic. They said what to her about that hat? They're doing what kind of photo shoot in cycle 4 and cycle 13 and also kind of in cycle 2? Okay. Oh, they put a weave in her hair that she nearly lost, or that she lost a lot of hair over and had to get it professionally removed, but there was no one around her to do it, and she's still growing it back.
I'm watching for the first time since we just recently, because we did a video which will hopefully be out by the time they're seeing this podcast episode. You and I recorded a video together watching one very infamous episode, and so I started watching back from the beginning of cycle 1. So I'm like in 3 right now, getting close to the end of 3. And I really should make a video just about watching America's Next Top Model in binge form for the first time, because cycle by cycle, it's just like, here are all the problematic things cycle by cycle that I caught. What did I miss, though? Because there were things.
And even if you break it up by cycle, it's like, oh gosh, and then this happened on this episode, and this is why this is a problem. And luckily with the Oliver Twixt interviews, it just kind of shines a light on these moments and why things happened the way they did.
Yeah.
Like with Ebony in cycle 1 and them talking about the texture of her skin. And she's like, yeah, I have a specific cream that I use. And then when I ran out of it, they sent me to CVS.
Oh, great.
And so it's just like, oh.
So going back to the beginning, as far as just for people who don't know what America's Next Top Model is, what's the on paper, this is how it started kind of thing.
Well, back in the early 2000s, Tyra Banks had an idea where how do you are supermodels born or are they made? And so Tyra is like, I want to take a group of girls and try to make her him or them the next top model. And it's a competition where they go through various challenges and various challenges and photo shoots to help simulate the fashion industry to kind of, instead of like, the career that's just like up and down, it's like straight to the top, and it's like you're a supermodel now and you will be booked for jobs and you will be famous. And so that's kind of how it started. And 24 cycles later,
it's still going somehow.
Or it's still a worldwide phenomenon, and people are talking about a cycle 25, but nothing's been announced yet. So we'll see if it ever comes back. But because of the panorama, people got into it and they're like, this is problematic, and it's gotten a lot more press, but it's not to the point where people are like canceling Tyra. People have tried to cancel Tyra, but
I think Tyra's at the point. You get to a certain point where you're uncancelable,
Yeah.
Okay, why are we...
the TARDIS is malfunctioning.
Oh God, we're gonna be stuck in 2003.
But yeah, I'm sure Wikipedia does a better job, but it's basically she takes 12 to 15 or 10 to 15 models, and they go through a series of quote unquote weeks where they have different themed photo shoots, and at the end they have a winner who usually gets a contract with a $100,000 contract with CoverGirl Cosmetics, and they get to be a part of an agency and maybe one or two other things. And so it's just like, oh, you will be the next top model and you'll be famous after this and it'll be so great.
So when they say week, how close to actual weeks are there, like filming weeks?
Usually an entire episode takes 3 to 5 days to film, is from my understanding. So It's not like 7 days of one episode, 7 days of another. It's just like, okay, after the elimination, it's another quote unquote week. And usually on the show, it looks like back to back to back to back, but usually there's a lot of time in between where you spend a whole day for like a challenge, then you spend a whole day for photo shoots, but then there are days in between when they're either doing their own thing or, having a lesson or whatnot.
That's good. I feel like I would be a bad reality show producer, because I'm like, can we just see them happy for a minute? Just like for a little second.
Yeah, but happy is boring. Well, according to them and ratings. And so it's just like, we can't have too much kumbaya. We need to throw some wrenches into the fold and have a quote unquote villain, and we need to film the drama of it all. The models go through extensive psych evaluations where they're asked different questions like, oh, you see someone injured after a car wreck, what do you do? Or questions like that. So the producers know exactly who they're bringing in, and they're like, maybe this personality will do well with this personality, or this personality type will clash. And so usually at the beginning they have a group of 34 or so models, then they have the first cut down to like 20, and then after that Tyra Banks is standing in front of them and is like, I only have 13 to 14 names, and these 13 to 14 will represent the girls that make it into the house and will fight for the chance to be America's next top model.
I know, in cycle 3, which is what I'm on right now, I thought it was funny the way that it was worded, because they had the 14 of them, and then one of them went home after Jamaica. And it was funny the way that she worded it. She was like, the house only holds 13 of you. I'm like, don't phrase it like it's a sleeping situation issue. I wish I could take 14 of you, but there's only 12 beds in a trundle. Like,
yeah, I remember in cycle 11, there was a point where they're like, oh, there are only 12 beds and like a couch, and someone ended up, and I believe it was Samantha who ended up sleeping on the floor. And if I remember, there's a story about Samantha where they set her up, and she didn't deserve it. Well, none of them deserve it, but it just kind of came out of nowhere. But I think they saw a potential storyline, and they're like, we are going to take this and we're going to run with it.
So we have two options of how we can go through this, right? We can go by cycle, or we can go by scandal.
Oh gosh, because I'm very scatterbrained. I think I'm allowed to say that, scatterbrained. So I could be talking about or I could be talking about the fight between Joanna and Camille in cycle 2, but then I'm like, oh, in cycle 19, Kiara and Darian were having a fight about who's the biggest B word or something like that.
So like, let's just as like a starter course, like it's still the TARDIS is really, it's really. Huh? Did that work? That worked.
5 minutes later, the lights are blinking again.
It's probably going to be, and I'm just like...
The TARDIS downloaded all of America's Next Top Model.
The TARDIS is like, wait, I have some hot takes.
And side note, to show how much of a fan I am, I kind of want to do the thing where I name every single winner from cycle 1 to 24 first and last name. Am I allowed to do that real quick?
Sure. We'll give a spoiler warning.
Oh yeah, spoiler for cycles 1 to 24 of America's Next Top Model, but these are the winners by first and last name. And just so everyone knows, there's nothing that like has the list on it. Avery can attest. I have nothing in front of me that would like give away the answer.
Oh my god, that origami paper has every name,
no.
first and last written on
it has all their names. But the name Adrienne Curry, Joanna House, Eva Pigford / Marcel, Naima Mora, Nicole Linkletter, Danny Evans, Carrie D. English, Jasleen Gonzalez, Celicia Stowers, Whitney Thompson, Brittany McKee Sullivan, Tiana Anderson, Nicole Fox, Krista White, Ann Ward, Brittany Klein, Lisa D'Amato, Sophie Sumner, Laura James, Jordan Miller, Keith Carlos, Niall DeMarco, my favorite personally, India Gantz, and Kyla Coleman.
I was really hoping you were going to say Eva, because I'm in 3. I really, really wanted you. Hoping.
Sorry.
No, I don't actually, because first of all, I'm not going to remember half of those names, because my brain is just, like, all over the place. But I was just, like, waiting for 3. I was like, oh, I hope it's not the unlikable, one of the unlikable people.
Oh, God. Wait, who in cycle 3 do you find unlikable?
Actually, there's really not anybody that's like, ooh, because I think, like, Eva is supposed to be, like, the villain, but she's not. Like, she seems like a very nice person, like, genuinely. Because, like, they had, like, that thing where they were, like, Tyra, like, called her out for being mean to the other girls, and she was like, I'm really sorry. And then she was just, like, chilling out, and then everybody was like, she stole from me.
Yeah.
And then she didn't, and it was just like, I feel bad for Eva right now.
Yeah, but there was that time during casting week where it's the one girl who is really thin, and they're like, this spreads a bad message. Don't be this thin. She's like, I'm literally on weight gainers. I take 3,000 calories a day. And then Eva was just like, that's disgusting. My cousin looks like that, and trigger warning, she has like she has disordered eating.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of that talk coming up. So just trigger warning in general.
Yeah, trigger warning, everybody.
Yeah, you remember when we read Model Land, which is going to be its own podcast episode
yes.
on its own one day. But you remember when we just had to say trigger warning all, because I got to the place where I was listing off so many trigger warnings that it was just like a block of text, and it was going to block you out if I had to like list every single one off.
Yeah, I think that was around the time we got to our 100th Tyra Y and our 80th she's 15 kind of thing.
Yeah. So, all right, so let's just start with like cycle 1. Who are like, if I've never seen cycle 1, who are the notable people in that cycle, like that I would need to remember for like the important things?
My first thought is Robin.
Yeah.
And I would say Robin and Elise are kind of the main characters of that cycle, because I get, or like the beginning of the show, because America's Next Top Model kind of revolutionized reality TV shows, and because it was like the first of its kind. I know there was Survivor and American Idol, but America's Next Top Model was like one of the first pioneers of reality TV. So this is just the blueprint, and I think they really lucked out with the castings of Elise and Robin, because Robin was the very religious kind of, in Elise's words, proselytizing individual, and she had that point where she and Ebony are fighting, and she starts singing like, how excellent, and singing that and having the prayer and stuff, and it's just like, what is happening? And then Elise is the notorious one who's like, Adrian, stop quoting Jay and Silent Bob in my ear. That is annoying. Or stop screaming it in my ear. I've had enough of you. Katie, you are the fakest person I ever met. Giselle, you are a C word. Your parents must be ashamed of you. And Robin, what do I think about the verse, oh, foolish is the man who believes there is no God? You know what I think of it? foolish is the man that believes in that gosh darn tripe, and had like one of the most famous rants
I was
of
gonna
the
say
show.
that's such a famous. Yeah, you can tell right away that like, oh, this is like something notorious in the fandom.
Exactly, and it's just kind of those two were like the main figures, and it kind of.
I will say, because Robin is like the like villain of that season. Because she isn't very nice to many people, because she's like, I'm super religious and better than everybody. But I will say this. I always say, like, you never know if people are actually, how people actually are, depending on how they are on reality TV. Because, like, you never know how you're going to get depicted. But also, I also just felt bad for her because they called her plus size, and she is absolutely not plus size at all.
Yeah, they're like, your bottom half is plus size, but the top half is not. So you need to figure that out. And I'm sure she's like I think they weighed all the models, and I think Elise was like 115, and Robin was like 120 something, not one, like 140 something. And it's just like, but she's the quote unquote big one. And then they're just like, you need to show off your body so you could be more, or so you can be the one that all the quote unquote bigger plus size models look up to. And why don't you show off your body? You need to do that.
I was showing my brother this clip because I was just like, when I was watching Cycle 1, I was so perplexed. And I was like, here, look at this girl. And then I started like playing the clips where they were saying she was plus size. And he was like, I was about to say she almost looked unhealthily skinny to me, until they were like, she's just the big one. And I was just like, yeah, it's kind of an issue, the way that they talk about girls being too big or like whatever.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh, or this is the way the fashion industry is. But then they're like, we need to break the mold, but you need to stay in these molds, but you can't break them. But why aren't you breaking them immediately? You need to do this right now.
Yeah, because it could be a super inspiring show where they're just like, everybody could be, everybody has the potential to like learn this skill, because modeling is a skill just like everything else. Like nobody wakes up in the morning looking like they're getting their headshots done.
Exactly.
But it's not that. It's very nihilistic at times.
Yeah.
So Robin and Elise are the two most remembered characters from that season, but neither one of them won.
Correct, because Robin, they are, even though Robin was good television, because in the final four, spoiler alerts, they had to do a nude photo shoot, and both Shannon and Robin didn't want to do it, and they both cited religious beliefs, and Shannon did, because they said, we'll like double band your top and we'll give you nude underwear, and Shannon tried it, but she decided that she didn't want to go for it. And Robin was like, my grandmother always said, you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And she's like, first week it was a bikini, last week was a bra and a thong, what's it gonna be next week, kind of thing. But then they're like, oh, but Robin, during this private moment you shook your chest at Mr. J, and they tried to use that as like, you need to show off your body more, show it. And so
I think that's, if more of anything, the fact that Jay, that almost feels like harassment in the workplace. Like, is Mr. J okay?
Yeah, but apparently Robin said it was an accident, but apparently according to Jay, she shook her chest at him. And it's also interesting because Robin is like, no to gay people because earlier in the season, Ebony, one of the contestants, brought over her girlfriend, and we were shown none of the quote unquote Christian group other than Kizzy, because it was Kizzy, Shannon, and Robin, where we only see Kizzy interacting with Ebony's girlfriend, and we saw Robin and Shannon staying in the room, even though apparently there was a point, an interview somewhere where Shannon said she did go out and say hello, but Robin was very like, no gay. But Jay Manuel is a gay man, but she's like, oh, he's attractive, so this is fine. And she was
religious trauma warning too.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes. No. I just was like, let's see how many America's Next Top Model problematic things we can play. Can we play America's Next Top Model problematic bingo?
Oh gosh, someone's called fat, someone doesn't do this, someone's ill and is told they'll get eliminated if they don't do the photo shoot. And then I'm trying to so Robin was eliminated in the final four because she didn't participate in the photo shoot. And then Elise, she was kind of shown to be the smart girl that was really pretty, and Elise kind of had had one of the bigger careers of Cycle One, like post show.
Yeah, you were telling me that. I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah, I believe she went to Asia, and she was very popular over there.
Oh, she was beautiful. She was a great model. But yeah.
But her edit was that she's like too smart for it. And during the final three, she has kind of a speech where she's talking about how, or they're like, so what did you learn? I think they were trying to get her like, oh yes, this is amazing. I've learned so much. And she's just like, yes, I have learned a lot in terms of using my personality, but there is like genetics involved in being beautiful. And she talks about estrogen, and they're like, what are you talking about? And she's like, estrogen at a certain time in development in utero, a certain amount of estrogen can be given that'll create more likable, symmetrical, model-esque features. And she's not wrong either, because science has shown that individuals with like more symmetrical faces are considered like more pretty, and there are certain features that people find more attractive. But because she was, I guess, using a terminology that the judges didn't understand immediately, not saying they're ignorant or dumb or anything, just she's using genetical terms, and they're like, what does that mean? They're like, oh, you're looking down upon us, you're doing this on purpose, and they eliminated her.
Well, I think it was also just like they didn't like that she was like, oh, you guys, they wanted her to be like, oh my God, models like are the hardest workers, and I should never have judged the industry based on just like conventional beauty. And she's just over there like, but you've showed me this whole time that like you care about conventional beauty. So scientifically, this is how conventional beauty happens. And they didn't like that. Yep. We've been talking for 20 minutes and we're still on cycle one.
Oh, and there's still some other things to mention too.
Oh, yeah. Because there was like...
Do we want to talk?
I'm just going to keep going. All the trigger warnings, right? Anything that you can possibly think of as far as like the modeling world or reality TV that could potentially be triggering, there's that. So I just want you to be aware.
Yeah, and how, like, in the first two episodes, they had bikini shoots, and they're like, you're not high fashion enough while they're shooting in bikinis, and they're not really getting any feedback on, hey, when you're posing in or it's like, this is kind of the kind of magazine we're going for, try to like tone it down a little bit and pose like this. They're just like, no, you pose to your, or it's like it's a little bit too much, so you're eliminated.
Yeah, because like you and I know people who are models, and like it's funny because like the people that I know that are models know, like, you know, if you're going into modeling, you just need to know what your niche is, right? Working as an extra or working as an actor, all of it's kind of the same. It's just like, you have to know what your niche is, and then you know what you can be cast for. And, like, I get that, like, they're going for, like, a high couture fashion, which is a special, like, sect of the fashion industry. But it's also just, like, they're like, you are not model material. And it's like, well, she, in the right markets, would be a great model.
Exactly.
They're just not, they should be teaching them, like, how to figure out, like, where in the modeling industry they belong.
Yeah, but they're just like, you have to be good at everything instead of like these markets. And I remember on Oliver Twixt, I believe he was interviewing Molly from Cycle 16, and she was talking about how the photos that pretty much all the photos that the models, or well, spoilers, all the photos that are taken of the models most likely can't be used in a real world situation, because Molly was talking about how like different, or it varies from like state to state, where it's just like, oh, in this state, or from place to place, where it's like, if they're looking for more athletic, this is the kind of thing they're looking for. And then also with the top model photos, they have so much makeup and so much going on, and a lot of like a lot of Photoshop going on. And so they just can't be used because the agencies are like, this clearly isn't you. This is like a version of you. We want to see like the real you to see if we can use you like in sports modeling or high fashion modeling or something like that. So and that, yeah, going back to like finding your niche, but luckily for a lot of the contestants on Cycle 1, they've had really good careers. Like, I think a few of them were on like Price is Right, and and they were doing a lot of different modeling. So a lot of them have found success, but a lot of times it's the early outs, because I think what might happen is they kind of get that exposure and they kind of get connections, and they're not like well known enough because the agencies don't like a lot of the people who have been on America's Next Top Model because they see it more as a reality show and kind of mocking the fashion industry. And it's like, oh, you're not here for modeling, you just want to be an actress. And so they're like, so a lot of the models have had to like not, or they can't mention they've been on the show or else they might lose jobs.
And then just hope that their manager or like their agent just doesn't watch the show.
Yeah, and if they have, it's just like, you need to get rid of all these pictures and do this. So it's also important to have a good manager or agent. And Nicole and Giselle, they both also have interesting storylines because I kind of have a theory with Nicole that she was supposed to make it farther than Shannon because, you know, they're the tall blondes that they have. And so it's
all-American look is like so often kept saying about Shannon. She's the all-American beauty queen. I'm like, if you use that same string of words to describe her one more time.
If I had $1 for every time, I'd have enough to buy these women therapy. And man, yeah.
She's so all-American.
And so I think Nicole might have made it farther because the first 2 weeks they're like, oh my gosh, we love these photos. You're so amazing. But then week 3 came around and Nicole's storyline was kind of side note with Shannon, the first episode, they're like, oh, she looks like she tans too much. Her skin's kind of leathery. And she's also 18. And apparently she had just come back from vacation. So, you know.
I was shook because I was like, these 18-year-olds look 30. When they were like, her age at the bottom was like 18. I was like, that's 18. She's 18. She looked like a full like 30. Not like in a like she looks old way, but just like she looked like not a teenager, you know? And it was just like, oh, these poor girls in the modeling industry, they're like put through so much like to make them look older than they are. And then like, yeah.
all the makeup, being called drag queens at every turn. And it's just like, have you seen RuPaul's Drag Race? A lot of those contestants are fierce. But with Nicole, her storyline was her boyfriend. And you know, they tried to trick you because they show like a montage of her calling her boyfriend. It's like that was over the course of like 2 weeks where she's having like 5 separate conversations trying to talk to her boyfriend. And then after I believe Elise won a challenge, she had the chance to choose 3 of the other models, and she chose Adrian, Robin, and Nicole. But Nicole said, I don't feel well, I don't want to go. And so it's just like, oh, you're willing to give up this big opportunity for your boyfriend. And her story kind of has a happy ending because she did find success after the show, and she actually did or it sounds bad because of what you saw on the show, but she actually ended up marrying her boyfriend. But they have like from what I've seen on Instagram, like a really nice relationship. Aww. And Nicole is like, yeah, we got better. We talked it out, and she was talking to Oliver Twixt, and they talked it out. They were at very different points. They were able to make it work, and they have 2 kids, and it's just really nice. And also, she also revealed that she was actually pregnant during the time of filming. Oh. And so when she says, I wasn't feeling good, she actually wasn't feeling good, but she didn't know why until later because, unfortunately, trigger warning, she did lose the baby.
That's sad. But I know that you said she has, like, kids now, and she's married, and she's happy, and she has a great career, which is good. What else? Oh, the only other thing that I can think of worth pointing out, well, there's actually 2 things. There's very quickly, because it gets no attention on the show whatsoever, the winner, Adrian, got basically groped. Is that the proper?
Or apparently, though, from what I've read, apparently the gentleman in France put his hand up her skirt and touched it.
And they didn't do anything about it. They blurred that guy's face out.
They blurred his face out, and apparently the cameramen got in between her and the guy. Or to preface, this was during a Go See challenge in France, so Adrian had no idea where she was going or who to talk to.
Didn't speak the language.
And so she was just standing there, and apparently a man just went up to her and put his hand up her skirt. And she was like, I was standing right in front of the agency that she had to go to for her go see, but she couldn't go in because she got PTSD because stuff like that had happened in her past.
I can imagine,
And then later on, the judges criticized her for not making it to her go-see challenges because nobody decided to tell them what had happened. And they're like, oh, you need to be punctual. You need to go to this. This is a big opportunity. Why did you miss this? And then they criticized her outfit. They're like, you need to wear jeans. You can't dress like this. Why are you dressed like that? You need to pull your hair back. And she's just like, okay, she's just been traumatized by this situation, but no one does anything about it. And I just want to ask the members of the panel, when did you learn about this situation? And was there is there an apology? I feel like there should be like a big apology that should happen.
She did win, and apparently was, she won after all of that. She went on to win. She didn't get eliminated, but also, like, they did criticize her, and it was just like, and she probably, if she would have spoken up, I wonder if she was probably worried about the reaction they would have, or did production say don't say anything? That's the same girl who they made go to the elimination with food poisoning that they gave her.
Yes, because during episode 3 with the snake photo shoot, what you don't know is that they had catering for that photo shoot, and they hadn't eaten in a while, and so Adrian was devouring a piece of chicken, and Elise pointed out that it was not cooked all the way through. So she got food poisoning, went to the hospital, had to feign getting better to leave, and then went to panel, and like you could tell she was not doing well. And Tyra says, like, we're not going to eliminate Adrian. We're not going to eliminate Adrian for being sick, but if she does not go to panel, even though she already took the photo, we are gonna have no choice but to eliminate her.
Because it wouldn't be fair to the other girls, and it's like, do the other girls have food poisoning? Like,
yeah, it's just, so she's not there, and it's just like she wasn't getting eliminated based off her photos, so. It's not fair that Adrian isn't picking herself up by the bootstraps after getting food poisoning and going where all these other healthy individuals are going. And
yikes.
Yeah. Oh, and another point to bring up is Giselle from that cycle, because her storyline was that she was the unconfident girl, or she was insecure. And there was actually a post that Adrian made in 2020 about why she was so upset about America's Next Model, because basically she didn't get any of her prizes and Tyra wasn't really helping out in the situation, and so Adrian like ended up calling her and cussing her out. Oof. And so I think it was at cycle 5 where they didn't even bring her up. They just started showing Ioana to the current winners. And Giselle commented talking about her edit, because Giselle was edited to look insecure, but she's like, no, actually, I wasn't insecure. I was very confident in myself, and I was a very accomplished dancer at the time. And Tyra said that I'm trying to remember what she actually said, but Tyra said to her, like, America's not going to want someone who's like overly confident. So her version of humility was like, oh, I don't think I'm that great. But then they kind of turned it into like, you're insecure, so we're going to eliminate you because you don't have any confidence in yourself. And Giselle's like, I'm actually really confident in myself.
I did find that strange, because it was very clear that she was like really confident, and like not in a bad way. Like I think it's kind of sad that we like kind of make people feel like they should feel bad about themselves to be like good people. But she did seem very much like, oh, I did really good. I'm really like confident about myself. And then all of a sudden it started being like, oh, she's so overly confident. And I'm just like, she's so overly confident that she's insecure. And I'm just like, I mean, yeah, people do mask if they feel insecure sometimes. And they're just like, I'm so great, because they need to hear it from somebody. But she didn't come across like that. It came across like she was very confident.
Yeah, I actually screenshot the post that she made, and I don't know if or it's just like, oh, I don't want to like bring out my phone and be looking at my phone. But yeah, she basically was talking about how she was like an accomplished dancer and she wasn't insecure, but she tried to be a little bit more. She tried to be a little bit more humble, but then they used that against her, and it's like, oof. Oh, but what happened was she kind of has a happy end to her story, because during the cycle, she was asked about her aspirations, and she's like, I want to dance for Michael Jackson. And she actually did end up dancing in one of Michael Jackson's music videos.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
And I think she made a post recently about America's Next Top Model about how, the way they treated her wasn't that great, and she's you know she's getting her confidence back after all that. And yeah, also side note, a lot of the models had to go to therapy after this show, after their treatment.
The show should have had them in active therapy. Like,
apparently they talk about they did sometimes have therapists, but I think it only happened 1 or 2 times. And I believe it was Lisa who talked about she did talk to a therapist, and she's like, oh, yay, a therapist. I can tell you about what's going on. But they ended up using that against her during the cycle. If you don't know Lisa D'Amato, she was on cycle 5 and spoiler 1, cycle 17. And she has been very outspoken about her time on the show and how it's unfair the way that she was treated. And people say she should stop complaining about her treatment. And she's like, but people are watching the show and sending me hateful messages. And she also has some things to say about Alice in Harvard and Laura Kirkpatrick and Bianca Golden, who are regarded as kind of fan favorites. And she has negative things to say about them. And they've given their side of the stories on interviews like with Oliver Twixt, and Jay Manuel was interviewing Allison, and she gave her side of the story. So it's interesting to see kind of all the pieces fitting together with that. But yeah, it was very unfair the way that they were treated.
Speaking of, you brought up she got to be in a Michael Jackson music video. I'll use this to pivot to cycle 2. They all had to be in Tyra Banks' music video.
Oh yeah, Shake Your Body.
Yeah. That was a fun scene.
Oh, I thought it was really shady because during the music video, you can see the contestants and like their names on the screen, and they give more screen, or for the contestants that were it was the final 6 contestants, and the contestants that were in the bottom 3, they showed them walking the runway near the beginning of the music video, and then a full 3 minutes later, the girls that had the top 3 or that were called in the top 3 for their performances were like near the end, and I feel like they got significantly less screen time than the bottom 3 contestants, because it was like Joanna, she gets a nice little bit, April gets a nice little bit. Side note, April looks amazing with like her bangs and the black dress.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning. And then Sarah was also on the wrong, and then near the end they they don't even show them doing the choreography that they learned, where it's just like and down, chest, down, up, shimmy, 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 and then walk, 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 pose. But yeah, they were doing that, and they don't show them doing any of that in the music video. And then, and just in cycle 3, where Julie's like, I kind of want to break into the fashion industry through modeling so I can be a manufacturer.
They let her go because they're like, how dare you not think, even though like Tyra just said, like, this is a temporary career, like a professional athlete. She had a game plan for after modeling, and they were mad about that. But what did you think about in season 2 where after the music video where she was like, where Tyra's like crying and she's like, how could I let one of you go after I'm doing something new and people are going to criticize me, and then lets one of them go?
Exactly. It's because they didn't have enough budget to fly Sarah overseas. Spoiler, Sarah goes home. I think in the earlier, plot twist, they actually do bring the models overseas with them because they don't want spoilers. Oh, there's a whole thing with cycle 3 where with their international location where it's like, ooh, drama. But
oh, is there?
Yeah. And I think in the earlier, or just in the earlier cycles, I think they don't fly or if you're eliminated before they travel to an international destination, they don't bring you with them, I think because of budgetary constraints. But then in later cycles, it's revealed that they do fly all the contestants overseas for the most part. But I think in the earlier cycles, they didn't because budget. So it's like, plot twist, you're going home because we have to go to Italy. And so should we still talk about cycle 2, or should I talk about the drama with cycle 3?
Let's do the drama with cycle 3 while we're on it, and then we can circle back around.
And so apparently what happened was basically the contestants have to lie about why they're going overseas because they don't want anything to leak. And in spoiler, in cycle 3, the international destination is Japan. And so they go to Japan, and when they get to is it customs, I believe, where it's like, where are you going? What are you doing here kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess so.
And when they were doing that, apparently a lot of the contestants blame Anne and Eva for this, but basically when they got there, they were all taken to a room and they all thought it was a challenge because it's like, oh, what are they going to do? But it's like, no, they were actually like detained and told, and because they thought that they were courtesans. Essentially, they thought they thought because it's just like, oh, a bunch of young, beautiful women, and all that good stuff. So they thought that they were doing that. So
the show didn't like contact anybody and be like, we're sending, like, I don't know, maybe that's just not something you can even do. I feel like in my mind, like if a major network show is bringing over like a bunch of people, then you would have some kind of conversation. But maybe that's just not even something that can be done. I don't know.
I think because it was so early on, they didn't have the experience in place to be like, oh, this is what we're doing, we can't tell anybody, or have like a better story.
I just had a flashback. So I'm new to America's Next Top Model, but one thing that I did watch with my mom every afternoon for a long time was the Tyra Banks show when she had her talk show, which was a different kind of wild. But that just reminded me of one time Tyra Banks on the show, they had this guy to come in, and he was like coming in from overseas, and he was bringing in piranhas because it was like a piranha foot treatment where like the piranhas eat the dead skin off your feet. So, like you put your feet in with the piranha, it eats the dead skin off your feet.
Oh.
It was apparently all the rage for a minute there in like the high fashion world. And so Tyra had this guy on her show, but the guy got detained at the customs because he was flying with like these like weird fish, and they like thought he was like some kind of like national security threat, and he got like detained, and to the point where like Tyra has him on the show. And I can't remember if she says we had to do this at a different time because he was supposed to be here last week and this happened, or if he managed to make it. But she's sitting there with her feet in the piranha thing, and she's like, this man got detained for just to come on our show. And everybody's like, woo! Detained guy! Yay! Like, and it was just like, it wasn't like anything that was like Tyra Banks' fault, but it was just like, it's just this like moment that I had forgotten about until you said that. And I was like, what is with Tyra Banks shows getting people detained?
Yeah. And I know I don't believe they use piranhas anymore, but there is a type of treatment where they have fish in a tank, and you put your feet in, they eat the dead skin.
Yeah, I think, again, this is like a middle school memory. If somebody's like, it wasn't piranhas, it was like this other kind of fish, fair enough. I just remember it was fish that ate your dead skin off, and I was like, that's terrifying. Does it work?
Apparently it does. And so, yeah, apparently some of the contestants believe Anne and Eva might have said something where maybe they didn't get their story straight, and so they were all detained. They had to fly to Guam, and so they had to call their parents and be like, this is what happened, and then the crew had to like get it so to where they are able to get in, and they did get in, and and when they get there, Amanda is just like, oh, the flight was so long we had to change our clothes, and then they go to this hotel where it's this cubby hotel, and they had to do a Campbell's chicken noodle soup or Campbell's soup commercial, and it was very low budget. They were basically sitting like in a random place on like a balcony kind of thing, and they just like talk into the camera, and apparently it's because they weren't on schedule, because Jay apparently had this big photo shoot planned for all of them, but because of the timing, and they got detained and had to get sent back. It's just like,
I can only imagine the screaming of producers being like, they what? Where are they? Why are they in Guam? Like
exactly. So that's a whole big thing.
Yikes.
Oh, and I would highly recommend a lot Nicole and Nicole from Cycle 1 and Amanda from Nicole from Cycle 1 and 3 and Amanda's Oliver Twixt interviews, because once we come back to Cycle 3, there's a note about Amanda that I have, or a note about Nicole that I have to make. And
wait,
a few
a different
Amanda.
Nicole from 1 and 3 though, like not a returning Nicole?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the blonde Nicole from Cycle 1 and the redheaded Nicole from Cycle 3. I would suggest listening to their Oliver Twixt interviews because they spill a lot of tea on that situation. But yeah, going back to Cycle 2. Oh gosh, Cycle 2 had a wild start because because they had the fashion show where Jay Alexander is like, you all were terrible, and then proceeded to not give them any. Well, we weren't shown any feedback, but they weren't given any feedback. Oh, side note, Jay Alexander is one of the most beloved individuals from America's Next Top Model. Pretty much everyone, except for except for Jayla from Cycle 5, said that they love Miss J. I
can see that he's probably a very fun person, like, to be around. He seems like he's like the Simon Cowell judge in the way that he like is supposed to be, where he's like a little bit tough and he kind of ribs them, but like I'm sure like I think it was like Cycle 2 where the one girl was crying and like there was a clip that was just kind of cut over really quickly, but it was him like hugging her like when she was crying, and I was like, aw, that's sweet.
Yeah, and yeah, a lot of the contestants have said that Jay Alexander I think Jay Alexander turned into the person everyone thought Tyra was going to be, because Jay would like give them advice or help them out or just be really nice and support them. And he also has a really nice moment with Takara where it's just like, oh, he's being shady, but it's like a really fun shade where it's just like, you know what, Takara, you want to go and eat some fried chicken? Do it. Or eat some food. He kind
of reminds me of like the adults in my life that are just kind of like tough love, but they're really like they're there for you. You know, like that's really sweet. Like I was kind of watching, I was like, Miss J kind of reminds me of my mom. Like, you know, he has that like tough love, but I'm actually here to help you energy.
Exactly. So shout out to Miss J.
Yes. So let's see. Oh, one more thing of note that I thought was interesting, and like we could probably do podcast episodes on just like cycles at a time, honestly.
Yeah, this could be 1 to 3 just because you've been watching them, so I can be like, fill in the blank.
Yeah, we'll probably have to do multiple.
Yeah,
you know what? Content.
Exactly.
Less scripts that have to be written for. No, just kidding. But I'm just thinking, podcast, we're at 46 minutes right now.
Oh gosh, and we're at the beginning of Cycle 2. Oh, I have a whole story about like the first episode of Cycle 2.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Or what were you gonna say?
I want to hear the story first.
Oh, okay. Well, I would also suggest listening to Janasha's interview with Oliver Twix, because first of all, Janasha, during the first fashion show, she helped April because April put on her second outfit first. So she had to change out quickly, and Janasha's like, here, let me help you with this. So, and a lot of the I also listened to Mercedes and April. Also, April and Mercedes look exactly the same.
Do they?
They do. And side note, April is one of the most stunning contestants ever on America's Next Top Model.
I thought April's going to win for sure. She just like has that like all the girls are gorgeous, but April was just like killing it in like every competition. I'm like, she's like got that like supermodel like flair.
Exactly. And so and all the contestants described Janasha as hilarious and like one of their favorites in the house. And so that's why when Janasha was eliminated, spoilers, she's just like, the house is going to be so boring without me.
Yeah.
And so Janasha helps out April. And so what happens is and also what the audience isn't shown is the night before the first photo shoot on Cycle 2, they were apparently out for like a party or something, or they had to do something for production and be out until really late at night.
Yeah. And
they basically knew that the first photo shoot was going to be a nude photo shoot, essentially.
Yeah.
So what Janasha did the night before was she got up early at like 4 a.m. so she could shave everything so she could be ready for the shoot. And she went back to bed and apparently had a really weird dream where there was like a car accident or something in her dream. And she looked down and there was a glass shard in her. But it was like, it was male. And so she's just like, this is a weird dream I'm having. And so the morning comes and everyone's getting ready. Oh, and also listen to Shandy's interview with Oliver Twix, because she does not like Tyra.
That's funny.
Or she does not like her treatment on the show, which we will get to why later. But apparently,
this is just gonna have to be 1 through 3.
Yeah,
this is gonna have to be 1 through 3. We'll do. Hopefully, everybody's like, yes, more of this, because we're like, guys, we have so much. There's so much that can be said about this show.
Listen, I have been watching this show since I was 14, Cycle 11. the problematicness of what happened with Isis during that show. Isis is queen. She's amazing. The way she was treated on that show, and just like, we need to educate people more about how certain things are and are not okay. But I do thank America's Next Top Model for bringing Isis on, because I was able to understand like a trans woman. And I'm just like, oh, I never heard of that before, because the first time I heard of that was like a documentary about the first man who got pregnant, and it was a trans man.
Oh, I remember that documentary.
Yeah, and I remember...
Super problematic. 2007 or whatever that came out was wild.
And I remember watching that, and I'm just... And you know, thank you, Tyra, for bringing Isis on. But then the treatment Isis got, where was I going with this?
Janasha was asleep.
Yes, Janasha was asleep, and apparently Shandy did try to shake her awake, but she wouldn't get up. And so everyone had gotten ready and was getting in the car, but then April noticed that she wasn't there. What we weren't shown was that April did try to go back to wake Janasha up, but the problem was the elevator was they could take the elevator to where they lived, but it also took you to Video Village for production. And when she tried to go back to the elevator, there were 2 crew members in there, and they kind of signaled like, no, no, no. And April thought that meant like, no, you can't go get Janasha. But what they were saying was, no, you can't get in this elevator.
Because it's going to Video Village.
Because it's going to Video Village, and you can't do that. So she was confused, and so she ended up getting in the van and not being able to wake Janasha up. And then this poor cameraman has to stand there for, I think, a little over an hour before Janasha's woken up, and she's just like, I don't know what happened. They didn't wake me up. And they're like, get here as soon as you can. And also what we weren't show, and what I talked about a lot of America's Next Top Model before this with Avery, because I'm like, oh, I'm so excited.
Gabe is my guide into the show.
Exactly.
I texted you when I was at the end of getting down to the wire in the end of cycle 2, and I was like, my fight or flight is kicked in, and you texted me back and were like, oh, those last 4 episodes of cycle 2 are so cringe. The producers loved it, everyone else did not love it.
Exactly. Or it's like you like it at first, but then you realize how problematic it was, and it's just like, but when the thing about production is that it's not as fast paced. They don't go in immediately, go in hair and makeup, and they're immediately ready. The makeup that they had to wear for the first photo shoot took a long time, and also a lot of the girls were like shaving beforehand, so that took some time. And so by the time Janasha got there a few hours late, there were still girls that hadn't gone through makeup yet, and it actually wasn't that big of a deal. But they were like, you were late. We have a storyline ready for Janasha.
I said that when I was watching that, I was thinking that, I'm like, they're doing, because they put him in like full body paint. It was beautiful. They had like all of the like, it was like murals on their bodies. Like it clearly took a lot of time, but I was like, even if she's 2 hours late, like there's all of these girls, like there's going to be ones that are not ready yet. There's like, from doing extra work, like you obviously don't want to be late, but also if there's a big pool of people who all need to get through extensive hair and makeup, if you're late, it doesn't really matter, because there's going to be still waves of people. You have to be really, really, really late for it to be a like, everybody is ready and you're not even here yet. So I was like, there's no way it was that big of a deal, right?
Yeah, they're treating it like it's New York Fashion Week, and they weren't able to get a look down the runway, and everything is ruined. It's just like, she was a little bit late, everything was fine, but they're like, storyline, we need to make this dramatic. And then also one of the contestant, I don't want to say they made fun of Anna for not doing it, but they kind of like berated her for not doing it, because she's like, or like in All Stars, Shannon was like, oh, I don't want to wear lingerie because I want to show that, or it's like, that's something for my husband, because it's like the difference between underwear and bikinis, where in bikinis you want people to see you in that, but in underwear sometimes it's like, this is a more private thing. But
what cycle was All Stars?
17.
Okay.
And so Anna was just like, that's for my husband. I don't want to like show that to the world. And like the male models who are there, the way they're positioned, they might see more than she wants shown. And so she's like, I don't want I don't want to do this. So she ended up not doing the photo shoot. So I'm sure production was like, cool, we got our storylines for the episode where we know who we're putting in the bottom two because of this, and everything's great.
They also could have, like, given them the warning to be like, if you don't want to, like, if they really could have been like, they could have had them agree or, like, consent to doing nude or almost nude shots beforehand. So, like, there's no surprise. Like, if they cast somebody who they knew didn't want to do nudity and then sprung nudity on them, that's kind of a setup. There's really no, you know, there's no... And it's also just kind of like, oh, she's not a team player. It's like, but if you sprung nudity... Like, you can't... That's a big deal, like, in the industry. You don't just, like, nudity is, like, not taken, or it shouldn't be taken very, like, lightly, because people have to be told, and then there has to be, like, you know, procedures put in place so that it's still professional. Like, even with actors, there's, like, intimacy coordinators and, like, all this stuff, and they have to be warned, and they, like, have, like, conversations and, like, all this stuff, and it's, like, you know, you can't just be like, hey, surprise, nudity, and then if they don't want to do it, be like, you're not a team player.
Yeah, and it was, or I can't remember, or I think it was Jessica. I apologize. I am unable to pronounce her next name, but Kobeissi. She has a YouTube channel, and she's a professional photographer, and she was watching some of these shoots where the nudity is kind of sprung on them, and she's like in a professional, or it was her and maybe a few other individuals, but she was like, in a professional modeling scenario, your agent would tell you about this. Your agent isn't just going to be like, surprise, it's this. They're going to be like, this is what we're doing. Are you comfortable with this kind of thing? And I'm sure a lot of individuals are like, but in their contract, it probably says this. It's just like, you might be doing this. And sometimes it's just like, but sometimes people might not be comfortable with the subject matter. And maybe they thought like, oh, I'll have some other underwear to wear that kind of covers everything and things will be retouched out. But most of the time that wasn't the case. And it's just kind of like, production probably knew that what the models were uncomfortable with. So they're like, oh, we're going to have a photo shoot with this. Oh, you don't want to do it? Oh, drama, more ratings. Ha ha ha.
It happens in pretty much every single season that somebody's uncomfortable with having nudity sprung on them, because that's kind of understandable. But then there's also this thing that happens where, because in season 1, again, trigger warning, there was a whole thing about, like, does Elise have...
The TARDIS is broken. Oh no. Oh yes.
You know what I'm gonna say.
The Elise eating disorder, because almost every single cycle has trigger warning, has an eating disorder storyline, and for some reason Elise's only lasts for one episode. Except for after the final 4 photo shoot, they're like, oh, you don't look too thin. You actually look bigger.
Yeah, because, like, obviously you don't know unless you know a person, and obviously things can be edited. But, like in season 3, Cassie, like, was like, oh yeah, I do throw up after I eat, but, like, not every time. And people are like, she has an eating disorder. She just is in denial about, like, that's not healthy. But whereas Elise was just like, no, I'm just like, I eat when I'm hungry, and then, like, when I'm not hungry, I don't eat. And it just kind of was like this kind of, like, rumor that spiraled out of control. That seems very plausible to me, like, given everything else about, like, how it was handled, because it's not, like, it doesn't keep coming up. It just comes up, like, that one time.
Yeah, and Adrian was like, oh, me and another contestant swear we heard her being like, guys, I need to go into the bathroom, and they said they heard her, like, throwing up and stuff. And then, and that's when they were doing the media training, and she's like, what am I supposed to do about an eating disorder? Or when someone says it, and it's just like, if you have it, come clean, but I don't. Okay, so then say that. And if there is any truth to it, say something. And it's just like,
Yeah, so it was just like...
And then I think she was later put in the bottom for that episode because of, they're like, oh, we don't know if you're really healthy. Are you putting on a front for Tyra? Kind of thing.
But it's like, it's so interesting because, like, my theory, in my opinion, it feels like that almost happened in the first season because of, like, a misunderstanding or an accident, because it's just like, oh, like, model world, that's kind of like something that people are already, like, worried about. And then you have this girl she's really naturally small, right? And so, like, she probably doesn't want to eat, like, all of these big meals, like, all of the time. She might feel sick. She might not want to do that. She might be somebody who just kind of eats in little bits, and then people are genuinely worried about her or egged on by production or a combination of the two to like make a story. And then like it kind of goes away because every season after that there's like one girl. There's like the one girl. It's like the girl that has the eating disorder to varying different degrees of like how serious are we taking this? Because like Cassie definitely was struggling for real.
Yeah.
But then they didn't help her by telling her that her hips were too big. So good for them for really sticking it out for Cassie.
Yeah, but I think Cassie didn't react the way they wanted her to because she's like, I'm not going to model for this designer if he thinks my hips are too big. That's really, I'm just like, whatever.
Well, yeah, because at that point, that was after the point that they, I guess, at least threatened to put her in counseling. So, like, if they actually did, that's good because then the therapist is there being like, fuck them. Like, if a designer is like, oh, she's not unhealthily skinny, you don't have to work for them. Which probably also wasn't good for, like, what they... I'm speculative. I imagine from the other things we've heard about the show. Self-confident, assured models that are like, I don't have to work for you if you're going to put me through this is not really what they like.
Yeah.
Because it's reality TV.
Okay. Yeah. Or there are a lot of times where there are girls that were confident in themselves, and they're like, you're overly confident, but then you look back and you're like, they're just confident. They're just like happy with themselves, and they're like, I know my worth, and if you don't want to do this because like the way that I look, then I'm just not going to work for you. And they're like, no, you must mold yourself. You must do what we want you to do. You must be willing to learn and change yourself for us.
I always say everybody should strive to be like Prince Edward from Enchanted, because when he's like, it's supposed to be that he's like conceited when he's like, sire, do you like yourself? And he goes, what's not to like? And then it's just like, that's played as like a joke, like he's like very conceited. But like in actuality, that's just kind of like very wholesome, right? It's just kind of like, he didn't say like, yes, I'm the best that ever was. He was just like, yeah, I don't, like, why wouldn't I, what's not to like, I'm not perfect, but like, I think I'm likable. Like, it's kind of a good, healthy place for human beings to exist in.
Yeah, when he jumps down from the bridge and he's like, I've been dreaming. Boom!
Oh, always makes me laugh every single time.
Yeah, and like the way he handled that, and he wasn't pompous about it. He's just like, he's a cool dude.
No, I love him, and I think my favorite part about the second movie was just like the screen time that he gets to like be just like he and Nancy are just happy and they're doing their thing and he's proud of his strong, confident wife, and it's just like, aw, I love this. They're all friends still. This is wholesome. But anyway, yeah, there were a lot of things like that where it was like somebody was just like, I don't hate myself, and then the producers are like, but you have to hate yourself. That's what modeling is all about.
Yeah, and I feel like, or I know with Joanna in Cycle 2, she had the quote-unquote eating disorder-ish storyline because, you know, there's the famous, or not famous, but there's the well-known clip of she takes off the jacket and you can see like a little bit of her back showing, and it's just like, and then like that's pointed out to her, and it's like, well, she just wore it's just I guess the way that the top was and the pants, the shirt she was wearing was kind of too low, so it's just like it just showed part of her back. It's not that big of a deal. And she's like, I'm a size 2. What more? Or she's like, I'm a size 2. Do they want more toning? And Tyra's like, yeah, that's all they want. And it's just like, but what does that mean? Do they want her to be like more muscular kind of thing with toning?
Yeah, and it's like, because, like, I guess her thing was, like, she has struggled with her weight and, like, lost a bunch of weight, and good for her, but it was almost like they were hoping that she would have, like, unhealthy ideas about her body image because she had to lose weight, and she didn't, because it was like she lost weight in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Like, she did what she wanted to do for her, and she didn't, like, feel pressure. It didn't seem like she was like, oh my god, I hate myself, I have to, like, lose all this weight, and it wasn't, like, this unhealthy thing. It just seemed like, yeah, I just lost some weight and then that was it, and then there was no story, and so it almost felt like they were upset about it. And then there was the whole thing with Camille where she was like implying to Jay and Tyra that she had an eating disorder. Camille was an interest. She was definitely like the villain of that season.
And then you rewatch and you're like, wait, she's just confident. She like, why are these girls attacking her? And I remember during like Bethany and Ioana's interviews with Oliver Twix, I know Bethany was outright like, I didn't like her, and Ioana was like, she was holding up production and she was walking around in lingerie, and so that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But then you watch and you're just like, Camille's just very confident in herself and not showing a lot of emotion. But I feel like but production wanted her to have emotion and she wasn't playing ball with them, because I feel with the Joanna Camille kind of quote unquote fight, Joanna was kind of more willing to play ball with production, or she was giving production what they wanted. Like after the whole dinner situation, or no, after the go-sees, you can see her upset in the car and she's like, just put it on my credit card, I want to leave. And it's like, oh, drama. Will she stay? Will she go? Oh, she stayed during this moment. It's like good for her. She's willing to do this. She also knows her way around fashion. We love her. And Camille was just like very unbothered, and maybe had 2 instances of where it was like, Camille, you can't do that. But then Joanna was just yelling at her all the time sometimes, and it was just like,
yeah, I mean, there were definitely, I think it's one of those things where it's like reality TV wants there to be like the good guys and then the bad guys. And in real life, it's more just like people can do good things and shitty things, and it's somewhere in the middle. Like,
it's like Once Upon a Time.
Yes, morally gray. Like, because like Camille did definitely do things where it was just like, oof, that's shady. Like the implying that she had an eating disorder to the judges, and like there was one other thing, I can't remember what it was, but there was something else where it's just like, oof.
Was it the killing with kindness comment?
It might have been that.
Or the acting challenge?
The acting challenge was just funny. The acting challenge was just funny because if you haven't seen the episode, this one girl, Camille, is just like, they give them, what's his name from Bold and the Beautiful comes in, and they're like, I think it was it was either Bold and the Beautiful or As the World Turns, I forget, because I'm doing content currently on both of those shows. And I remember thinking, oh, this is the one that I'm working on, and it was one of those two.
Yeah.
But they brought in this soap opera actor for them to do a scene with, because this week was all about acting, and then Camille is just like adding lines to the script, and they get like all these funny shots of like the acting coach like looking through, being like, where is she from?
And or at some point they have the lines that she's actually supposed to be reading, and it's just like, oh, and side note, what Joanna revealed in her Oliver Twixt interview was the reason why she was gone from the dinner tables for so long was because she would sneak to the hostess stand and call home. Aww. Essentially. And during Camille's interview, she's like, isn't that against the rules? She should have gone home for that. But I think, Camille, and then during the acting challenge, apparently Camille had an allergic reaction to something, and so her lips were swelling up. So she had to go through a photo shoot with her, with her lips that were hurting, and then she had to go get that checked out, and then they go to this coaching, and Tyra's like, where's Camille? And it's like, shouldn't you production have told you she's like not here because she's having an allergic reaction? And so she comes in halfway during the challenge, and all the other girls are crying because they are doing this challenge where they have to like tell their insecurities to the person across from them, and the person like says the insecure. It's very Midsummer, because in Midsummer there's a point where Florence, or where the main character is crying and everyone around her is crying too, so it kind of enhances the emotions, and so everyone is crying, and she comes in and she's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I felt so bad because I'm like, oh, that would have been me, like walking in, everybody sobbing. That's like something that would have happened to me, just like awkward, what do I do? Help, what do I do? But yeah, they played it off like she was being very like melodramatic, but it's like she has an allergic reaction. Like everybody's like, it looks fine to me, and it's just like, well, she clearly is like not feeling well. Like, why? They made it out to be like she was just like being a drama queen, but it's also like, if you're in a competition and trying to get like favor or like attention, you're not going to like throw one competition by not being there for like an integral scene. Also, I don't actually know. Like, I don't know like the ins and outs of like I'm not an acting scholar or whatever, but the one thing that we were always taught when I took like when I was taking classes was like our teacher would always be like, any technique that's making you actually break down, like there's one thing to like get emotions and be like, I'm channeling my own emotions. If you're feeling like wrecked after like doing like an acting thing, that's dangerous. That can lead to a lot of unhealthy things. So I was like watching that being like, I got some questions about this particular method of acting, because this feels a little borderline harmful, because they're just like actually sobbing and then sitting off in the corner just like sobbing some more. It's like, it's not so, you're supposed to be able to like get the emotion for the scene and then be like, that was fun, moving on. Like,
yeah.
If it's like I literally feel wrecked now because I'm thinking about my horrible childhood for like a week, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, and you know, Sarah, her storyline for a lot of the or for sorry. Sorry, Spencer. Sarah's storyline for the season was her father, I believe, is from Iran, and so he considers modeling to models are courtesans, so to speak, like ladies of the night, essentially, and that's all they are. So she's she's talking to her mom, and she's just like, I'm getting a lot of calls from him, but I can't tell him where I am because I'm too scared about it. And so so she kind of uses that, and so that was like the reason why she was crying, because in the challenge she's talking about like, why I want you to love me, and you don't accept my choices. And then Shandy, she was the black sheep of the family, and so she uses that, and she's breaking down, and the producers are probably like, we love this, their trauma. I find it interesting how with Shandy, where she was, or like earlier in one of the episodes, she was called a black sheep, which is not usually a common term heard a lot, and then like the person who came and was like reading their fortunes or whatnot is just like, you're a black sheep, and it's like, oh, how did they know that? And it's like, wait a second, did they tell her this? And so they're trying to get them to break down and stuff, and it's like,
probably because it's reality TV. Like, I'm not somebody who like rules out the idea of like, sure, maybe psychics are real. I don't think reality TV is where we're gonna like learn that mystery of the universe. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to break the TARDIS again.
Don't break the TARDIS again, or we'll be stuck in 2003.
Oh God, we're up to like what, 2004 now? Where are we right now?
We're bouncing between 2003 and 04, because I think cycle 2 and 3 were in 04.
Okay.
I believe. Oh gosh, and we still haven't gotten to Katie's storyline too, because
the one thing I was gonna say is like, well, like, you know, I guess with like the whole like black sheep thing, it's like, I mean that's something that people said about me all growing up, but it's also just like, it's the fact that it was specifically like something that was said, and then the reality show psychic said it. It does feel very coincidental. Could it have just happened? Sure, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They haven't really proven to be very like ethical in all these other places, so I'm not gonna be like, they had a fake psychic. What? My faith in humanity is broken now because America's Next Top Model was insincere.
And also going back to sort of the earlier part of cycle 2, we have, yeah, I guess we start with Katie, because the moment of when they have Ziomata doing Grace Jones, that comes a little bit later, kind of after Katie's storyline, because Katie's storyline is she's the innocent 18-year-old who has a lot of potential, because early on, like the second week, she got best photo and she won the catwalk challenge. And so for her, and she's very confident. She's like, they can cut off all my hair, I'm fine. Cut to her getting a pixie cut and crying hysterically, and Janosh is like, oh yeah, Katie told me that she can cry at the drop of a hat. So, and you know, when she's crying about getting her haircut, I think that was one of the first time, or this is the early cycle, so Tyra's like sympathetic towards the girls when they have makeovers. When they have makeovers, I don't know when Tyra was genuine, how long she was sympathetic for the models.
Yeah, because like she does have this thing, like, at least because I'm still in the early part, where it's just like, you want to like Tyra when she like sits on the floor with a girl in the bathroom and is like, it's okay. But then also, like, you know that, like, she does very much the opposite. So it's like, oh, I guess that's just, yeah.
Yes, I know the times that you see Tyra on camera is the only time that the models see Tyra.
I can imagine,
and they thought they were going to get a lot more mentoring from her. But it's only maybe in the first 3 cycles where she's actually, like, showing them, or, like, especially in when they are impersonating celebrities on cycle 2 is when you can see her like directing them and whatnot, and she does a few photo shoots in the future, but yeah, in the earlier season she's really good about that. But with Katie, I think they were sympathetic towards her at the beginning, but then they kept doing things to slowly break her down to the point where like, we're so over Katie, because I don't remember which happened first, but where they were told to like dress in their signature styles, and and Katie was told, like, go down to where the courtesans hang out and don't dress like that. And then she's like, you called me a a harlot, essentially. And he's like, no, I didn't call you that. I just said don't dress harlot-like. And so she started crying from that, and everyone's like, oh, we're over it. And then they have the photo shoot where they're dangling above a hole. They're in the top of a building, and they're dangling above several holes. And it's just like a clear drop to the bottom. And she's terrified of that. And they let her call her dad. They like give her a cell phone, and she's calling her dad. And so I think they emotionally broke Katie down through that, but then they're like, oh my gosh, why is she crying so much? And like, I think Jay was kind of over her, Tyra was over her, and by the end, she's just like, there was a point where like, she's just like, I don't care anymore. I think during the acting challenge, she's like, they want me to kiss this guy that's so weird, and she's like, this is dumb, I don't want to be here anymore, and they finally eliminated her.
Yeah, and also it's kind of like, sure, maybe that was like probably like not. Like, it probably was annoying, but, like, also she's 18, so I kind of expect an 18-year-old who's going through, like, all of this, like, craziness that is reality TV. Like, maybe it's just projection. I also probably would be crying a lot of the time. I am one of those people. I'm like, I would probably be the person on reality TV that would just be like, if put in that situation where somebody was always like, oh, yeah, you look awful all the time. You look ugly, right? And you're 18, I would also probably be like, man, that hurts.
Oh, speaking of looking really young, during one of the photo shoots, they had a beauty shot, and Janice proceeded to tell Katie that she looks really young, like a child. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
and
I don't like Janice Dickinson. I don't know if that's like a hot take in the community or not, but like, ooh, I've wanted to throw things at my TV.
I think she was great for reality TV because she had the knowledge, and she's been in the industry for a long time, but she had the personality to be like, I'm going to say whatever I want, and if you don't like it, that's too bad. So
I can see like the like, I can definitely see the argument of, like, I'm trying to be as hard on them as possible because this is what they're going to have to face. But it definitely went very far. Like, there were just things that Janice said where it was like, oof, yikes.
Yeah.
Oof.
Or it's like, it's hideous, I need blinders, kind of. And it's just, and, you know, calling Takara fat, or just using language like that.
Or when she's just like, you know how I feel about, like, Takara had a beautiful picture, and everybody was like, this is a beautiful picture. And she's like, you know how I feel about bigger girls in couture. And it's just like, okay, so you just don't like, you're basically just being fatphobic is basically just what that is.
Yeah, and actually early on in the cycle, she's just like, oh, you're giving these skinny girls a run for their money. So, and then later Tyra is like, you're the reason why the models are doing this so they can stay skinny. And Janice is like, so? And it's just like, the fashion industry needs to change.
Yeah, because there are definitely times where I see, like, it at least appears that Tyra is, like, standing up for people. But then also, like, she's still calling the girl who's definitely not plus size. So it's like,
yeah,
like, she's fighting for plus size people, but she's like, it's okay that this girl is plus size, not at all plus size.
Oh gosh, wait until we get to cycle 4. Once we get over all the craziness and talk about Kenya. So I know Kenya is one of the most beautiful models. Have you seen her Instagram? Look at Kenya. She is gorgeous. And they had the gall to when she's going through a very stressful time, and they literally are just like, oh, get ready. They basically show her eating a bagel, and they make it look like she's eating multiple bagels, but because their contestants in their confessionals saying, oh, she's eating a lot of carbs and bread and stuff, and she's literally eating like half of a bagel, and they're trying to make it look like she's getting bigger. And but yeah, going back to the cycle, I think we are on cycle 2 and 3 with the disordered eating and Janice Dickinson, and yeah, good for reality TV, but it's just like, some of these girls need therapy now.
The one part where Camille, she was doing like the media training, and Camille was like, like how some people would say you're a bitch, and she's like, do some people say that? And then it cuts to her, and she's like, that hurt my feelings. I'm a member of the PTA, and I'm like, oh my god.
And it's just like, I feel like a show we need to watch is the Janice Dickinson Modeling Agency. There are 4 seasons.
Is that a thing?
That is a thing, and it is so chaotic. Like Syria is watching it. Is like, hello, beautifuls, welcome back to my Chanel. Today we're oh god, Janice Dickinson's modeling. Beep. Because she says the C word and she bleeps that out. But oh my, it's so, she's like, I want to start my own agency and I want to make it couture. And she's doing this in like Los Angeles and stuff like that. And it's just like, Janice, no. But it is unhinged.
We do need to see that.
It's crazy. And yeah, there is some stuff that goes on, and the storylines are weird, and it's 15 minutes of fast-paced everything, and it's just like...
But it got 4 seasons.
Yeah, it got 4... And, like, the 4th season, they're all living in a house together. And then... Yeah, there was one moment where she talks about one of the models that she hires, or I don't know if she makes her part of the agency, but she's like, oh, she's gonna teach you all how to walk because she's the fiercest walker, where it turns out the model Janice is talking about is trans, and she was one of the semifinalists for cycle 4 of America's Next Top Model, but they kicked her out because she's trans or something like that.
Oh, great.
And so Janice Dickinson is like, you're here now, and then they proceeded to like not show her at all. They're like, she's gonna teach them how to walk, and then they just never show her again.
Great.
And it's just like,
Yikes.
What?
Oh,
speaking of problematic moments, Tiffany from Cycle 4, she was a semifinalist in Cycle 3, but since we're still talking about Cycle 2, it's just like, I guess we can go back to when Zio Morrow was to portray Grace Jones.
Oh, the first blackface that nobody talks about.
Yes.
I've been told, I have not gotten to either of these things in the cycle yet, I've been told that there are not 1 but 2 cases of race swapping, which just reminds me of that show Black White, where they took the black family and they put them in whiteface, and the white family and they put them in blackface, and they tried to pass them off to see if they could fool people, like if they live as black, if they live as white, and that was the reality show premise. Oh yeah, no.
Oh,
you want to hear something that's gonna make it worse? This show won an Emmy. Yeah.
What did it win an Emmy in?
I don't remember. Let me look it up.
I swear to good gravy, if it's makeup, then I'm gonna be.
It might have been makeup.
No.
I want to say makeup, but I could be wrong. Black, white, Emmy. Yeah, like I think it was Ice Cube that produced it and like did the music video or not the music video, the theme song for it. It's very like a bunch of YouTubers like Jarvis Johnson and Jordan Adika have covered it together. It's a lot. It's real cringe. It's just people in blackface, and it's just like we're in blackface. We're gonna go to the slam poetry night as black people.
Oh no.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so this was in like 2006. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, cut to Tara talking about the race swapping photo shoot and being like, I'm sorry, basically being like, I'm sorry you're offended. I remember watching a YouTube video about this for
outstanding makeup for a series, non-prosthetic.
No.
It won an Emmy.
Oh my
gosh. For the blackface.
Oh my gosh. But
that's awful.
Oh gosh, but yeah, going back to America's Next Top Model, this is kind of the first instance of blackface that occurs out of the 3 times, and Zio Morrow had trepidations because she's like, I don't think I look like her. I'm very uncomfortable with this. I don't know if she might have said more to why she was uncomfortable other than I don't look like her. And Tyra comes up to her and she's like, let me tell you something.
I know. I was like, oh my God.
And I can't. I'm trying to remember the name of it's like Trey on. I can't remember. I believe Trey was their name. I can't remember their full name. I apologize. But they were basically saying how it is because I feel like I don't want to say anything about this because I don't want to get anything wrong, but I believe
we're white. So
yeah, I'm very white. I'm not the person to talk about, but I'm just going off of what was said in the video, and it made sense to me why it is problematic.
So what happened was she was a black woman who they were making look like Grace Jones.
Yes, and so they had to paint her darker than she was.
She was a lighter skinned woman, and they made her very very dark skinned. And she was clearly uncomfortable with it. I would not be surprised if she had said more than that, but they basically tried to make it out to be like she's the bad guy because like Tyra was almost like she's ashamed of being like darker and like she doesn't think Grace was beautiful, and it's like clearly that wasn't the case. She probably was more uncomfortable with the changing of her skin tone, but they tried to make her be the bad guy. So some people who are more knowledgeable about this than us have pointed out that also constitutes blackface because you're still costuming somebody's skin tone.
Yeah, they could, because pretty much for everybody else, they didn't have to do anything like that, because I remember April was Catherine Zeta-Jones, and so they're like, oh, we didn't want to put you in like a stereotypical Asian role, so they wanted to change it, and they weren't like, oh, we're gonna paint you to look more like Catherine Zeta-Jones kind of thing.
They were trying to like give themselves a pat on the back and be like, we didn't cast her as Asian or something, but then they were like, but then Tyra goes, she basically was like, Catherine Zeta-Jones is probably not all white, so we can still cast you as her, when they were trying to pat themselves on the back for like, we let her be a white person. And Exactly. It was very cringy, and it was like, ugh.
And yeah, one of April's kind of storylines is her trying to find her identity, because she's like, my dad is white, my mom is Asian, and I don't know kind of where I fall because I'm kind of in between two worlds here. And Janice was like, well, you look Asian, so you need to embrace that. And it's just like, a lot is going on, and it's like with Gina in Cycle 6, where she's like, I am not really in tune with my Korean heritage, so I don't know who I am, or my South Korean heritage, so I don't know who I am, kind of thing. So it's just like, if you you can't tell people how to like express themselves, and it's like, you look like this, so be this, and it's just like, but you can't expect them to act in this way when it's just a double standard kind of thing.
Yeah.
I apologize if anything I said has been problematic.
No, like just reporting on what it is. I just have been watching this on my own and being like, I wonder what other people, because I'm not like interacting with the community at large. I'm just kind of watching this and being like, huh, that seems weird. I wonder if other people find that weird, like I find that weird.
It actually wasn't it wasn't until recently where I watched that video where it's just like, oh no, there were actually 3 moments of blackface in the show, because in Cycle 2 this is what happened with Zio Morrow. So I'm just like, oh, thank you for educating me on this and telling me like why this isn't okay, because I'm a scientist. I always like to learn, and I take in new information, and I'm not going to be like, I don't accept this. It's like, oh yes, I understand, this is problematic. And and I hear, or I am constantly back and forth with like, Tyra owes this to them. Tyra doesn't owe them anything. They signed up for this, but it's like this. And it's just like we need to take these examples and kind of use them for like future reality TV shows. And another important thing that Alicia from Cycle 18 talks about is aftercare, and I think America's Next Top Model can be a precautionary tale or a cautionary tale when talking about aftercare, because some especially Shandy, I guess we can get in. Should we get into Shandy, or is there
I forgot we hadn't even gotten into Shandy yet. You can get into Shandy.
Yeah, where especially with Shandy, who we're about to talk about, it's like aftercare is very important, because Shandy is probably could have been like one of the biggest success stories of the show, because she had or at least her edit showed her to have a big transformation, because she's like, her storyline was, oh, she's the brunette nerdy girl, quote unquote dorky girl who works at Walgreens.
They were trying to do a like, she took off her glasses and she let her hair down and she's this gorgeous model thing, is literally what they were doing, which she did like look very different by the end, and she was, she's obviously beautiful, like she was, and she just seemed to have a really good personality, and all the like photographers seemed to like to work with her. Like all the photographers had good things to say about Shandy, which like kind of probably means that she could be really successful, because generally that's how it works in any kind of entertainment business. If the people who are directly working with you think that you're cool, like they're not gonna want to like deal with somebody who's not, so they're just gonna keep calling you back.
Exactly. But what the audience didn't know is that Shandy or at the time was a DJ. So she knew a lot about the nightlife and stuff like that. So she wasn't as like nerdy and she wasn't like as innocent as they portrayed her to be. And so she's just like, yeah, so they're kind of during her interview, she's like, yeah, I'm not as like innocent as they portray me to be. And so they dyed her. What I have been educated on is they like to say that the models are ice blonde, but there's I think only been one time where the contestant was ice blonde, and it was in cycle 4, and we will get into that when we talk about cycle 4. Michelle, if anyone knows, Michelle I think is like one of the really only cases where the model where she was ice blonde. And I think there's a reason why they didn't do that after, but they made Shandy ice blonde. They took off her glasses. She's like a gorgeous, stunning model. And one of her storylines throughout was her relationship with her boyfriend, who
they've been through a lot together. Like,
and Shandy talks about how her family didn't really accept her because she's the black sheep, as we discussed before. And Eric, her then boyfriend, was very proud of her, and and she's like, oh, we're in a relationship and this is what love is. But there's a moment where you can kind of see cracks in the relationship where you're like, oh, I don't know if this is for the best, when he's just like, hey, do you remember Lauren? I'm going to go to the movies with her. And Shandy got really upset because we learned a little bit later that like going to the movies was their special thing.
Yeah.
And so she's like, oh, and she's basically, you're gonna cheat on me with her, and he's like, oh, she's married with a husband. It's like, oh, people don't cheat on their husband. No, they don't. Yes, they do. And then later we're shown her being like, I'm gonna go out and have a good time, and she and a few other of the contestants are like dancing at a club, and there's a guy who's trying to ask her a number. But it's also kind of a problematic situation because apparently he was very persistent. And so he was probably like following them around because there were cameras, and is like, let me have your number. Let me have your number. And I'm sure, sure he probably got a little bit aggressive about it. Maybe I don't know what happened, but I feel like she says persistent, but he might have been like following them around and to like get rid of him. She's like, sure, I'll take your number kind of thing. I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but that's kind of what I assume. And then they have a conversation, and she's like, oh, I gave this guy my number, and he's like, and Eric is just, her boyfriend is just like, oh, well, this is dripping with hypocrisy because you just yelled at me for going to the movies with someone and you're out at the club dancing with someone. And he ends up hanging up on her.
Oh, that isn't even the situation that I thought you were talking about.
Yeah. And so a few weeks later, and during the final 4, there's a party. And during this party, the hot tub they have in their house conveniently starts working again. The production gives them wine. And also, Shandy takes ownership of this situation. She's like, yes, I am at fault for this. But she's like, production knew what they were doing. And so there's a party going on. And so a lot of the contestants are like, oh, they haven't done anything yet, but this is the direction that they were going. And then it cuts to Shandy making out with this other guy.
And then it cuts to her crying because she has
extreme guilt, because they were going to show more of what happened, but they were going to show a little bit more of what happened during that night. But the reason why it changed, I remember seeing this in a documentary, the Janet Jackson incident happened at the Super Bowl where like Justin Timberlake pulls open her jacket and her top had fallen down. Because of that instant, that changed everything, and they cut down the scene because they were going to apparently, it didn't last long, but apparently
I think we've had this conversation before, but having seen the episode makes it so much worse somehow in my brain.
Exactly. But they were going to show more of that, more of what happened between Shandy and the other guy that was there. And apparently there was like an uncomfortable conversation afterward where she was asking him about, like, does he have anything? And they filmed it.
What? No.
And then, and that's not even and then they have to do a challenge the next day after she essentially, or she cheated on her boyfriend essentially. And they have to do this challenge where they have to go to a flea market, buy an outfit, and like show it off to this gentleman, and excuse me, and then she ends up winning the challenge, and she has to have this. She gets to be the guest of honor at a dinner party, and then that night she basically has to call her boyfriend on camera and tell him what happened.
The fact that it was on camera was very invasive. I did not like that. Made me very uncomfortable. I was like, ugh. It felt like different situation, obviously, but it was like XQC the streamer breaking up with his girlfriend live on stream. Oh yeah, that's a whole different thing. Yeah, no, they get into an argument and it ends up being like a multiple hour stream where like she's crying and he's like breaking up with her and everybody's watching in horror just being like, what the fuck? Like, I was like, is this one of those situations where they don't know they're streaming? They do. He does.
Oh, yeah.
Awkward. But different situation, but it gave me those vibes. It was like, I should be seeing this. This is a private conversation.
Yeah, and apparently the cameraman did apologize for having to film that, and apparently there was a crew member who, after when she was sobbing on the floor after her boyfriend hung up on her after this conversation, a crew member, I believe, I don't know if they were a cameraman or just a crew member, like picked her up and took her to bed. Aww. After that situation. So it's like, oh, that's nice, but it's just like she's basically has to be like, hi, I cheated on you, and oh gosh, there's a whole thing after this, but people are like, oh, you should get over it, blah blah blah, but it's just like people still, like on Reddit and stuff, still quote like him saying like, you had relations, and like they like make fun of the way he pronounced it and stuff, and it's just like,
yikes.
And it's just like, you expect her to get over this while you're still making fun of it. But then during Oliver Twick's interview with Shandy reveals that she was going on the Tyra show because a lot of the time they are. Side note, America's Next Top Model should have either had a magazine or a modeling agency so that they can get some of these models work. Yeah. And then it's just like, oh, I have like modeling shots for my book and stuff, so it could be more helpful, because I feel like after the money or how popular it got, they could have done that.
It happened the same way with American Idol, where like multiple American Idol winners didn't really have careers because they didn't get work because the label just didn't want to use them. And it's like, well, you should really have your own label then, because then you can like, you have the connections to get like people, even like back in the early 2000s, you had the connections to get like this album out and have it be like properly promoted and stuff. But
yeah, there were a lot of times, or especially when we get to cycle 11 with McKee, there's some drama with there was some drama with her and the agency that she legally wasn't able to talk about.
Yikes.
But we can, if I remember, we can get to that once we get to cycle 11. But basically, Shandy was invited to the Tyra show, and she was gonna, I guess, talk about her time on the show, and Shandy said, we can talk about anything. I haven't watched the show. Please do not bring that up. What they do, they surprise Shandy with that scene and make her watch it. And I can't remember what happened afterwards, but they basically showed her the clip, and afterwards Tyra's like, how do you feel about that? And so Shandy was, and so at the end of her Shandy's Oliver Twick's interview, Oliver's like, if you had anything to say to Tyra, what would you say? And she's like, why are you so mean?
Aww.
Because and then there was some drama with Lisa from Cycle 5, if I remember, when she went on the Tyra show too. But yeah, they showed that to Shandy, and I remember Shandy got like a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Tyra show because there were the quote unquote Fiercey Awards, and Shandy won one of those.
I hate that they call them the Fiercies.
Well, and surprisingly, that word is never mentioned in Model Land. So
I know, right?
So it's just like, well, it's not that bad, but
it was a rejected Model Land thing.
Exactly. That was in the 500 pages that were cut out.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. Side note, Model Land was supposed to be 1,000, or the manuscript was 1,000 pages. It was cut down to like a little under 600.
If you don't know what Model Land is, it's Tyra Banks's YA novel. That's,
yes.
Infamous for being probably one of the worst books ever written.
Yep.
I'm not saying that just to be like dogpiling on anybody, but it was We read the whole thing on stream. It took us like 5 or 6 streams. It was bad.
Yeah,
it's quite bad.
Go to Avery's YouTube channel. Avery talks about stuff, and to watch the VODs of her and I reading Model Land.
Losing our minds slowly.
But I love how in your Sexy Beast video I mentioned Model Land. It's like, oh, you're like, oh, I'll find it. It'll be great.
It was not. It was great, but it was just funny that I found that clip and I was like, this was filmed before we found the Model Land book.
Exactly. And so going back to Shandy, basically after that event, she was very kind of emotionally detached from the rest of the cycle. So, and it was interesting because they are like during the final 4, I think they were like gassing her up like with the challenge. It's like, oh, you did amazing, you win this challenge. And then during the judging panel, they're like, cut up this blue t-shirt and make it fashion forward. And they were like, wow, Shandy, you did such a great job. And then they criticized her picture, and then they kept her for the next week when I'm sure she was like, please let me go home. Mm-hmm. And so she was kind of like emotionally not there for the rest of the cycle, clear, because she was just traumatized by the situation. And so she was booted in the final 3. Oh, and side note, I can't remember if it was all, but at least the models that went overseas are all in the final runway show for the cycle, because at the end of America's Next Model with the final 2, they all walk a fashion show, and the eliminated models also walk in the show, and they actually show them in cycle 13 and 14 doing that, but they make it look like this is a whole new thing. But no, they actually bring in those models because they need models, and they walk in the show. They just don't show them on camera.
Aw.
And so you want to take, or there was some drama like in the final 3 episode because they were like, oh my gosh, your hair's sticking out of the end of this helmet. And she's like, I'll do it myself, and ends up like doing a bad job on the back of her neck. And it's like, oh my gosh, this big drama. And it's like, no, the person just shaved it. And she takes like one of the best photos.
It's a great picture.
And it's like when you think America's Next Top Model photos, like that is like one of the main ones that's seen. And it's like, yay.
Do you realize what a scavenger hunt we're sending poor Spencer on for all of these photos?
Oh, and we haven't, I'm so sorry, Mercedes. We haven't even talked about Mercedes lupus.
Yeah, Mercedes, the whole plot line is she's fighting through her chronic illness. What a trooper. And it's just like, but why does she have to?
Exactly. Yeah, Luxeria had a lot to say about this because it's basically like you need to fight through your chronic illness. And she's like, you can't be stressed out when you have a chronic illness. And it's like, I think they would see them trying to comfort her as giving the other models an unfair advantage, even though she's going through a chronic illness and her hair is falling out and she's really stressed. So she's like at a level below them, but because she quote unquote pushed through, oh, this is amazing. And it's just like, some of the comments on the video are like, yeah, this is not okay. And then, oh gosh, and I remember not really knowing what lupus was, but then she was like, my liver could give out a moment. And I'm just like, what?
Well, Selena Gomez has lupus and she had to have a kidney transplant.
Oh yeah, and one of her friends gave her the kidney, and I remember that. So it's just like this, and
yeah, it's just like, when it comes to like the quote unquote spoony community of like, mental illness, chronic illness, like the idea of like normalizing, like a lot of people put a lot of work into normalizing the fact that like when you have certain illnesses, your energy level just cannot meet somebody who does not have that illness on certain days. You're going to have good days, and then you're going to have bad days where it hits you really hard. And, like, the whole thing about, like, oh, I don't have the spoons for that is, like, normalizing the fact that, like, this is the amount of energy I have today. Even if it's not the energy that everybody else has, this is what I can feasibly do without, like, pushing myself over the limit in a way that's unhealthy for me. And that should be normalized because no one should feel like they have to give more than they're physically or emotionally able to do because of something that's not their fault. So, like, I felt she rocked, by the way. She gave some of the most beautiful pictures of that season fighting that illness. But also, I felt so bad for her because she, like, clearly didn't feel comfortable telling production for a while. And I was just like, what are they saying to make her feel like she can't talk about this illness? Well, also, she's talking to the cameras about it, so Tyra definitely knows.
Yeah, and she has a conversation with Tyra, and Tyra's like, I feel like you were giving an attitude when you were portraying Billie Holiday. And she's like, oh, I was just really tired that day. And Mercedes like, you think I have an attitude? And she's like, no, I'm not going to eliminate you for being tired. But if I feel like you have an attitude, I will get rid of you. And it's just kind of like, oh, but that's not the message you want to portray. It's like, you must push through this at all time, and that's not okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and side note, Mercedes during the first photo shoot where she's wearing the big orange headpiece, that was actually an inspiration for the drag queen Shea Coulee on the season 9 promo, where she's wearing a similar kind of headdress to that.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so that's a cool thing. Oh, and also one of the contestants from Cycle 2, Bethany, where she was supposed to make it a little bit farther, because you can tell, because during Heather, the third eliminated, they don't really give her much for a makeover. They're like, we're gonna trim you up a bit or give you some highlights. It's fine. But Bethany, where she was she was the one where they're like, oh, your tatas are too big.
I was gonna say, was she the big boobs girl?
Yeah, and in the second episode, she basically talks to Tyra about like, all you're looking at is my chest, and I think Tyra was like, oh no, she's getting too close to production. She knows that we're just gonna call her out for her chest the whole time, and so she and Tyra have a little bit of tension in that conversation. And during Bethany's chat in the Oliver Twix interview, she's like, yeah, that conversation basically sealed the deal, and that's why I went home so early, because she called them out on just looking at her chest the whole time.
I also felt bad because, like, I think people think that, like, because it's like conventionally enviable for girls to have like bigger chests, that like girls with bigger chests can't possibly be self-conscious about it, when in actuality, like, there's a lot of girls who like are told that their chest is like too big, or almost like that they're like doing something wrong, or like being too flirty or whatever, when it's like, I'm literally wearing a t-shirt. I cannot help that my boobs are big. Yeah. That's a you problem if I'm wearing like normal clothes and you're just like, but your boobs are big.
Oh gosh, that just reminds me of in Cycle 22 with Chris Leanne, where they were constantly like, you're being too sexy, and she's like, how do I change that? And they're just like, oh, just change it. And they brought up like, oh, I believe they were like, oh, you're Latina, so you're naturally sexy, so you need to work against that. And she tried, but they're like, no, too sexy.
Holy stereotype, Batman.
Yeah, and she was really well known on Instagram, and so I think they brought her on to bring on those followers, but then they kind of like, they berated her because they're like, you're not really a model, you're like an Instagram model.
Yikes.
And so Bethany was really annoyed because and Tyra's just like, oh, just hide it. And she's like, but I'm trying to hide it. But I think during the first photo shoot, she was kind of told to model that way, where like her arms are out like this, and they're like, oh, the chest is too big. And it's just like, well,
yeah.
And she's like, well, if you stop looking at my chest and start looking at some talent.
Yeah.
And so,
because it's like, I guess that there is like, I guess that, you know, models do, I guess, have to pose like what in the world happened here?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, God.
Tyra, we bind you. That's what Oliver says every time there's technical issues.
What? Tyra, we bind?
Because Oliver Twick's favorite show is Charmed, and I think that's a Charmed reference.
Okay, I get it. Like she's breaking his tech down.
Yeah.
So like, no. Well, yeah, because like I get that like she was trying to teach her that like, oh, like people have to put, like, models have to pose, like models all have something that like makes them not perfect, like it's just about how you like use it. But I don't think she did a very good job like teaching her. She just said pose differently, but she didn't really tell her how.
I think she said,
at least
like,
not that we saw.
I think she said like cross your arms more, and not like putting your shoulders back as much. But it's just like, okay. And then during the photo shoot, she tried to do that, and they're like, I don't like it, you're going home.
Yeah.
And then, and Janasha, they were literally every episode, they were like, you're too short. And so Janasha's like, oh, I'm not going to win because they keep bringing this up. So I'm just like, I'm not going to win because I'm trying, and they just keep bringing up the same thing. So I'm just like, okay, bye.
You don't cast her if she's too short. Like, first of all, she's 5'7". I get that, like, couture fashion is like 6 foot tall girls, but like
short.
5'7" is not short.
Yeah, or
in
sorry,
like normal person world. Yeah.
I'm adding air quotes to 5'7" short kind of thing because
I'm a 4'11" girly. I'm just sitting here being like 5'7" short. They do the same thing to Eva too, and it's just like, She's not short. She's just not 6 feet tall.
Exactly. But they don't bring it up as much. I think they mention like you're short, but you walk tall kind of thing. So it's just like shout out to Laura Kirkpatrick from Cycle 13, which is the quote unquote short cycle. But fun fact, Eva Pigford / Marcel is the shortest winner ever. She's 5'6.5", and usually the cutoff is 5'7". So even though the winner of Cycle 13, the short cycle, is 5'7", she's technically not the shortest winner. So I thought that was funny. But where was I going with this? Oh, but yeah, shout out to Laura Kirkpatrick because she's 5'6", and throughout the entirety of Cycle 17, we are never told that she's too short. So shout out to her to being able to find a way around the being too short thing. Oh, and Cycle 17 is when they have the Model Land preview.
Which cycle?
Cycle 17 is the Model Land preview. I don't know if I said something different, but yeah, Cycle 7, the All-Star cycle is the Model Land preview. Can't wait to get to that. But oh gosh, we haven't even we kind of got into Cycle 3, but Cycle 3.
Yeah, yes, you.
Well, first of all, they cast 14 models, but then, we're doing a photo shoot in Jamaica. One of you is being eliminated before you get back to the house. Oh, but we're having an elimination later, like a day or two later. So instead of having like a double elimination, they're like, oh, we're gonna surprise, we're having an extra elimination this episode, which, before that hadn't been done before. So it's like, oh, it's gonna be crazy. And poor Magdalena is like, I dropped out of nursing school for this. And she's the first to go home.
Yikes.
And then Leah they're like, oh, you need to find your angles better. But I think Leah's living her best life, so it's fine.
That's good.
Oh, and then Julie. Okay, so what had happened was, I talked about this earlier, but what had happened was Julie not only was the one who was like, I want to break into the fashion industry by being a model to become a fashion manufacturer, and they're like, how dare you, get out. What happened during her interview with Oliver Twixt was apparently she found a list, and she's not the first one to find a list. Apparently during interviews before they were like the final cast, she found during the like top 34 down to the final 14, I believe, she went into an empty room and she found a list there which had all the models on it and their stereotypes, or not the stereotypes, but like their
angle.
Yeah, their angle / character. It's like, what are we going to focus on? And her, I believe, was the ethnic girl. And Julie
Yikes.
is one of only a handful of Indian women that was ever on America's Next Top Model. So she saw it and she's just like, okay.
She was beautiful too. I thought she was gonna make it further.
Yeah, but I think she was kind of like, I'm not gonna play your games. And they're like, oh, you're not that great of a model, bye. Even though she got second call out the first week on her photo, and so it's just like. And then another thing is, apparently Julie doesn't remember this, but apparently Cassie told Amanda and Julie that she had the disordered eating, and it wasn't really supposed to be a secret, or Amanda didn't think it was a secret, but unfortunately Julie didn't remember. So it's just like she said. And then watching the scene where Cassie's like, don't tell anybody, the way her lips move, it doesn't match up with the audio. So I'm like,
so here's the thing about being an editor, like doing editing work for myself and for other people. And like my brother does movie editing, and he talks about this too. He's like, once you've done editing, you can never watch reality TV the same way again, because you're super hyper aware of all of the ways that they've like cut and spliced things together and like dubbed over. Because you can tell, you get to the point where you can start to hear, like, oh, that was filmed on a different microphone, or that was filmed in a different room, because I can hear them cutting with, like, different room tone.
Oh,
like,
the tire with the voiceovers.
Oh, yeah. But even just, like, talking about, like, Cassie being, like, when she's, like, don't tell anyone, like, if that was, like, something that was just completely added in or spliced from somewhere else, I wouldn't be surprised, because it sounded very, like, spliced in, you know?
Or to give an example, if someone doesn't understand, there are times when Tyra's talking and she's like, okay, and we're going to do this, that, and the other. Or I remember in cycle 11, it's just like, because you're not really listening and your photos weren't that great. And then you need to learn to listen. And they're trying to act like that was what she said directly after.
Or like you were telling me before when we were just watching one of the episodes before we came in here to film. But it was like in season 3 where it was like so-and-so got into a fight with Tyra, so now they're seen as like the boring one because they got cut from
Nicole.
From the edit. Yeah. And it was just like, and Tyra's like, I think she's a really pretty girl, but she's so unmemorable. It's just like,
yeah,
they put that in after when they decided they wanted her to be the unmemorable one. And it's just like, that's what reality shows do, unfortunately. But I don't think that, like, we talked about this in the Love is Blind episode where, like, a lot of people were like, well, why are you complaining? You knew what you signed up for. And it's like, okay, but no one should have to be prepared to sign up for, like, being treated less than human or like being disrespected because they're on TV. Like, I don't know why we do that where it's like so-and-so's famous, so-and-so whatever, so-and-so's in the public eye, so like we can just treat them like shit. It's not really fair because it's like that's still a person. Like, sure, maybe like nowadays you should there's more information to advise you against certain things, but especially earlier on, but even now, it's just like you shouldn't have to be expecting that they're gonna like character assassinate you.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to be on reality TV just to see my edit, but I'm also scared of what they could do to my edit because I remember I was talking, or there was a Facebook Live between some of the cast members for Naked and Afraid, and they invited me and I got to ask questions and stuff, and one of them was like, and Jamie, one of the survivalists, was just like, "Oh, would you ever go on the show?" One, no, because you're not seeing any of this. But another thing is that I was just like, I'm crazy, and they're like, we're crazy too, and I'm like, no, I would be a producer's dream because I would just like I could see them putting in some of the things I'm saying as like venting and like making that my character kind of thing, because I vent a lot, but I usually do it to myself or maybe another person. Then I'm like, it's over, it's done with kind of thing. But it's like, oh, he can be backstabby, he's saying this, he's two-faced, and a lot of the contestants talk about how the producers lie to them. And they're like, this contestant said this about you. What do you think about that? And they might be like, this person sucks. And it's just like, where did that come from? It's like, oh, the producers might have said this about them. And it's just oh, I hate them, blah, blah, blah. But, you see this a lot in America's Next Top Model where they plant seeds early on for the quote unquote cannon fodder models where they're beautiful. And so, it makes sense for them to be on the show, but they're not like adding anything maybe personality wise or drama wise. So they plant the seeds early on where they're like, you don't really have a personality. And I guess that's what they were doing with Nicole. But what happened, Nicole, in her Oliver Twixt, I know I'm bringing up Oliver Twixt a lot. And
Oliver Twixt is going to be, this is not sponsored by Oliver Twixt.
But shout out to Oliver Twixt. But me saying that, Lisa D'Amato is probably going to hate me because she does not like Oliver Twixt. and I'll tell you why later. So in her interview, she was talking about how during her elimination, she was talking to Tyra and she was saying, oh, you according or Tyra makes it especially known in Model Land that she does not like actresses, even though Tyra herself became an actress. But she's like, the actresses are stealing all of our modeling jobs. I want models to come back. The models need to make a comeback. And Nicole was like, I think you're making a mistake because you are eliminating the model over the actress, because she and Yaya were in the bottom two, and Yaya has a very successful film career. And so she's like, I think you made a mistake. And Tyra did not like that. And so Nicole was very much edited out of the entire season. And I guess they got to play it off as, oh, we already planted the seeds that she's forgettable, because 2 times in the same episode, she wasn't critiqued. And I'm like, that is not a coincidence, because in the acting challenge, it's like, the person forgot to give Nicole critiques, and it was just like, oh, you were fine. And then during judging, they're like, okay, we judged your commercials, and it's like, oh, Nicole's back there, and you can clearly see Nicole standing back there, because I think she was taller than Amanda, who was standing in front of her.
Smooth.
And so that's one of the things, like with Shandy being called the black sheep, where it's like that might be a coincidence, but it's like, oh, this was intentional.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, and side note, we haven't even gotten to Anne, Kelly, Takara, and Yaya.
Oh yeah, no, I threaded another piece of yarn because I was like, we still got stuff to talk about, so I'm just gonna, I was like, maybe I should wind down. No, there's still more.
Sorry.
No, it's not. I'm very glad that like these episodes probably wouldn't happen at all without Gabe, because I don't think I would have the patience to do. I can watch it and like do a video on like watching all of it and breaking it down. Doing all of this like back research about like interviews and things would not be something that I think I would have the energy to do. So thank you.
Luckily, I've been watching these interviews since the start. I believe Dion from Cycle 8 was the first interview that Oliver had, and then followed by Ebony and a few others. And that's when Ebony talked about like, I ran out of the skin cream that I usually use. I use a certain skin cream, but they sent me to a CVS, and
I feel so bad for Ebony, not just because I like have struggled with like acne my entire life, and like her skin, they were like, your skin is awful, and it's like, she's beautiful though. Like,
yeah, and she got first call out the first week, even though they did criticize that photo, and then during the commercial, or going back to Cycle 1, Ebony in the commercial shoot, they're like, you need to skip, but then they gave her flip-flops. So they were, oh, and Luxeria, hello, beautifuls, welcome back. She always imitates Adrian saying passion, and she's like, passion.
Passion. Bless.
Oh, I love Luxeria and all her like little inserts. There's like one where an otter is like, or there's like a gasp and it's an otter being like, and why aren't you making it to the pageant? And then she also always uses the clip from Family Guy where it's like, Tyra, I think you're being a little unfair. You haven't known what I've been through. You know what? You have no idea what I've been through, where I've been, what I had to do to get there. Blah! Giant iguana comes out.
Yeah.
But oh gosh, where was I? But yes, well, with Anne, apparently, or during her interview, side note, Eva and Anne aren't really friends after the show, and Eva was not in Anne's wedding, unfortunately.
Aww.
And Anne was saying how Eva was differently on the show because Eva and Anne became friends like when they were on their way to Top Model. Like they were flying for like the casting week, and they had bonded with one another, so that's why they were so close.
Yeah.
And Anne was like, Eva kind of changed, and Eva was also on Real Housewives of Atlanta and Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip. So
she was.
Yeah. Huh. And she poor oh gosh, Eva was pregnant both her seasons on Real Housewives of Atlanta, but she was actually she was like one of the more positive members of Ultimate Girls Trip Season 2 because there was just a lot of drama going on, but I really enjoyed watching her on there.
I like Eva a lot. Eva really strikes me as somebody who's probably just a really chill person in real life, but is good at being like, oh, you need me to do that because this is my job, because this is a show? Okay. Right?
Yeah.
And she wasn't even like, it seemed like they wanted her to be the bad guy, but she really wasn't. And so then, like, because, like, there's that whole thing where, like, Tyra, like, basically is like, I don't want to cast you if you're going to be a bitch. And then it's just like, oh. Oh,
and then they have the whole montage of them they cut to some of them and they just say Eva, and then it's like, oh, Eva, she was so mean to me, and a lot of the contestants from Cycle 3 have said like, oh, they asked us. This wasn't unprompted.
Yeah.
And so Eva, she's very much reality TV, like, yes, she's cool, she's willing to do what is asked of her for production and all that good stuff. And she kind of had the edit of like, she's transformed, look at her at the beginning and look at her now, she's a completely different or she's grown, she has character development kind of thing. And
but also she's just like, when the judges say to her face, like, we think you're a bitch, we need you to not be, and then she's like, oh shit, like she's like, if I've hurt anybody's feelings, I'm very sorry. Like, it definitely seemed like they were just kind of like, it felt to me like they were planting seeds to like make her the bad guy, and then she felt bad, like she had actually like done something wrong. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, there was, when she was talking about Amy, I believe her name is. That was a little much, yeah. Yeah, for those who don't know, Amy is a contestant who is very thin that they brought on because they're like, oh, unrealistic beauty standards, but
Amy was talking about how she's on weight gainers and she has 3,000 calorie protein shakes, and I believe it was genuine. It wasn't like for the show, but I believe she just does have a metabolism, and that's how, or it's genetics, and that's how her body works and whatnot. But Eva was just kind of very harsh on her about it. So it's just like, you don't talk about someone with disorder
No.
Amy did not have an eating disorder allegedly, but if you don't talk to someone who you think may or may not have a disordered eating and say what Eva said about it, and I'm sorry if I'm coming off a little harsh with the way I'm saying. I'm just like, this is the way it was presented. This is all alleged. What we see on the show isn't necessarily an active portrayal of who these individuals are. Please don't send hate to any of these models, please. Or I'm just going off of like what I was shown and whatnot.
We will turn this TARDIS around.
Exactly. And so sorry, our nervous laughter. But going back and with Anne, and Anne was also was a contestant where, similar to Kelly, where they just kind of emotionally beat her down throughout. The only thing is Anne stayed longer, but apparently during Anne's Oliver Twix interview, she was saying, "Oh yeah, Tyra gave me, I believe, either an agent or like the contact information of an agent or an agency," and Anne was like booked and blessed like after the show, no matter, even though like throughout they're like, "You suck, you're terrible, this is terrible." And apparently she was asking Jay for extra help, because apparently during like the first photo shoot, she's like, "Jay, what do I do with this? Jay, what do I do with that?" And she was getting a little bit of extra coaching. So I think because she had mental fortitude and her friendship with Eva, production was like, "Okay, we have a storyline. We can like sew this through the entire season.
Yeah.
This is fine." And with Kelly, oh gosh. Yeah.
Kelly.
Or it's like Kelly, then Takara, then Yaya. Some of the most mistreated models, because during Amanda's and a few other Cycle 3 contestants' interviews with Oliver Twix, they said that they thought Kelly was going to win off just by looking at her. They're like,
that says a lot to how much like the edit is messed with, because like if you were to believe the edit, she never took a good picture. They all hated her. Like they were all annoyed with her. You know, she just couldn't get it right. She just was bad at acting. Or bad at modeling. She couldn't take a picture. And so to hear them be like, "No, we thought she was going to win." Like that's kind of, that says a lot, I think.
Yes, and Kelly's background, and the way that I've seen, or the way that it's been, that I've seen comments and interviews and whatnot, the way that kind of it makes sense to me is people were talking about how Tyra didn't like the fact that Kelly came from such affluent beginnings, and that she had like more opportunities presented to her.
So don't cast her.
Yeah, but I think it was just, I'm sure it's like, oh, we can break her down kind of thing, because Kelly was from Seagate, which is one of the last gated communities in New York. She was like a tour, or she was like, there was a part where they had to like walk home from a challenge, and Kelly was like a tour guide, and she was very charismatic, and so. But a lot that rubbed some of the girls the wrong way. But so, and she like worked hard for everything she had, and maybe Tyra didn't like that, or it looked like Kelly got it very easily. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the way it kind of looked. But Kelly did face hardships in her life, because her neighborhood was a predominantly white neighborhood, and she did face racism and other challenges.
Yeah, again, I don't, being white, I don't want to, try to overspeak on these kind of things, but I did personally, I found I was a little bit weirded out by the way that the storyline almost became Kelly isn't black enough, or Kelly hasn't dealt with racism because she's richer. You know what I mean?
And or during her Oliver Twist interview, she did say that she did face racism. So I'm not like pulling this out of nowhere. I apologize if that's what it sounded like. I apologize if I'm overstepping, but she did say in her interview that she did face racism and whatnot.
I'm just going off the fact that they were like, oh, she's like a white girl and like she's, you know, she's not like all the other, you know, there was like a very specific scene where they were like basically trying to imply that she wasn't proud of her background or like she wasn't black enough or like something like that. Yeah. That's what they implied. And I was just like, that's a weird thing to imply about somebody else. I even think there's like one clip where like one of the girls goes, you know, you can't really say that somebody's not black if they are. Like almost like she was being like fed lines in this situation and she felt uncomfortable. So yeah, I was just like, that's a weird thing that hopefully they wouldn't put on TV anymore? I don't know.
Yeah. And then there's the moment where she describes the shape of her mouth. I'm not going to say what happened, but if you watch, there's a moment where she talks about her, like, she
says something and it comes out the wrong way and everybody, like, makes a big deal out of it.
Yeah, and so basically Kelly had a hard time because I think Takara and Amanda were the ones that were like really, or Takara told her how it was and Amanda was like very supportive of her because there was a point where they made Kelly feel so low that she was literally trying to pose in the mirror and she started crying because she felt that she was so ugly and she was trying to ask Tyra and Jay like, what do I need to do? And Tyra's just like, well, just practice, just do it, just change your face. I don't see what the problem is. And then you can clearly see production interference because during the photo shoot where the first week Kelly's in the bottom two with the beauty shots. Oh, side note, Amanda was talking about how again, really, it's a 3-hour video, but it's really worth it. Please watch the Amanda video because Amanda is a cool person and a great mom. And side note, Amanda isn't fully blind because her retinus pigmentosa, I believe, the studies weren't as extensive now as they were then. So I guess basically she can still see. She can't see as well, but she's still able to see. She's not blind. So, oh gosh, and during Norel's interview, she's like, she's not blind? Or she hasn't gone blind yet, and I'm just like, God, I would also recommend, and I think Ann and Norel, they actually, they had a reunion in real life. I think kind of partially prompted by the Oliver Twist interviews because they're still kind of friends, and so that was nice. But going back to Kelly and production, or Amanda was saying how her unretouched photo had a mole in her hair. Or a freckle in her hair, like her untouched photo, because the whole thing about that photo shoot was there was the untouched versus retouched photos where it's like...
Oh, she was saying they were messing with the untouched versions.
Exactly. They photoshopped the untouched versions.
That's not surprising, honestly.
And so, the unretouched. And so basically during that photo shoot, they actually show a bunch of Kelly's photo and she looks amazing in those photos. And Luxeria pointed this, Jessica, sorry, I'm loud. Jessica pointed this out or I think it was Jessica or Luxeria pointed out how they basically, she had like a fierce expression where she was like giving intensity with her eyes, but they got rid of like the marks around her eyes, so it just made her look like she was giving wide eyes.
Ah, I see.
Where, like, in the unretouched, she was smizing, but in the retouched, she wasn't. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but she was showing
I'm not laughing at you, I'm just having a flashback to Model Land.
Oh, the smize. The water usage, they just used up so much water trying to get the smize. It'll make sense later. But basically, it was pointed out she was giving intensity with her unretouched, but they basically like photoshopped it out. But they showed Kelly doing really well in her photos, but they chose a bad photo. Oh, and side note, Jay and Nigel, I believe, have said that Nigel said Tyra picks the photos, and Jay said that Tyra has not pick the photos that he suggested because I believe with all all the models film, he gives them a 1 to 5 star rating, and the ones with 3 to 5 stars get those photos get sent to Tyra, and Jay picks out like the best photos, but then he would see the final photos and is like, these aren't of one of the ones I picked. So and Kelly is just like, I feel like there were times where I did have more intensity, and Tyra's like, what she's like, don't blame the photographer or else you don't grow. But what she was really saying is, don't call out production, you hit the nail on the head kind of thing. So
well, she said, if you didn't say, if they had better pictures, they would have picked them. Removing herself from the situation as if she isn't the one picking the pictures.
Exactly. And so and they basically berated Kelly the rest of the time to the point where she was crying in the mirror. And actually, she won maybe the production forgot to get involved, but there was a challenge where the models had to pose in lingerie outside of a storefront, and Kelly won. Yeah. And you look at her poses, and they're really good poses, and she's giving a really good face, and so maybe it was one of those like, oh, we're gonna be honest and give you positivity, and then like have it crash down, because that was the week when they were doing the Levi jeans shoot, and they chose the photo of her, in her words, looking like a platypus. And Janice is like, oh, get over yourself. Can you calm down, or like get over yourself and just like get over it? And I bet there were and that photo apparently ran in like an actual magazine. Yeah. So there's a photo of her being like in she didn't look like that, but of her like in a magazine, and they did that on purpose to her, and it's just like, can you? Yikes! Like, Kelly deserved better, but Kelly's doing just fine. She is another model who looks exactly the same as she did, if not like
better.
It's like she doesn't look exactly the same, but
I don't think it's true that like people just start looking worse the older they get. Like, a lot of people really like age into their like a higher, like, it's almost like they're always beautiful, but like some people just age very well, where it's like, wow, I feel like that person is like, you know, grown into their own look and like figured out their look like later in life, and like just feel comfortable with it, you know? Yeah.
She had her Pokemon evolution occurred, and it's just like, wow. And I'm not saying she's old. It's just she was
gorgeous when she was on the show.
Yeah, and it's like her cycle was 18 years ago, and she looks absolutely, a lot of them, or pretty much all of the models, look absolutely amazing. I'm trying to think I know April looks the same, Chantal from Cycle 9 looks the same and stunning, and Nicole all the Nicoles look gorgeous. But and then now moving on to Takara.
Poor Takara.
Because what they do is, during these cycles, is with the plus size models, they assume they're going to have personality, and if they don't have personality, then they expect like super or like amazing photos every time, and if they're not delivering one or the other, they get rid of them, because cycle 8 has 2 plus size models, and one of them wasn't as charismatic as the other, and they keep the charismatic one.
Yeah.
Or like Diana and Whitney. I feel bad being like the charismatic one and the non-charismatic one, and then I feel like one of the reasons why I don't want to spoil Cycle 10, but I have theories. We'll talk about it then. But Takara, with her, she came in with a really bubbly personality, and they're like, oh, and it's kind of that trope like that happens in films and TV shows, where if you're bigger, then you have to be funny. You can't be serious. You can't you can't show emotion. You just have to be funny at all times. And sometimes that works, and other times it doesn't, because it just puts people in a box. And so there's a point in the I think it was, to me, based on like seeing it recently, my assumption is after she kind of she kind of tells Tyra and emotionally breaks down, she's like, my parents didn't really raise me. I had to raise myself, and I have to raise my family. She kind of breaks down and kind of has that cathartic moment. After that, that's kind of when they're like, you're not really here. You're not really showing your personality. Where was the like personality? You need to show your personality at all times. We don't see that anymore. And so they end up like putting her in the bottom. And then there's the whole thing where when they go on go-sees, only maybe one of the 3 or 4 designers has an outfit that fits her that isn't like shapeless.
That really upset me because like they knew her sizes.
Yeah, they knew she was coming. They weren't like, oh, there's a plus size model. Oh well. Oh, and side note, during casting week, they had 2 plus size model, and Takara was like, "What? She's not a plus size model. If you want someone with a little something, then you can choose me." And I think the Mary, her name is, I guess she didn't have the personality. She wasn't like as bubbly as Takara, so they just decided to like not have her, or they're like, "Oh, we're gonna hint at it. Will there be a chance for 2 plus size models to come in? We'll see." But they chose the more bubbly one. They chose Takara, who is seen as having a more bubbly personality, and so, and so the designers, they didn't really have stuff that fit her, and then during that week, the wardrobe individual conveniently didn't really have clothes that fit her, even though previously in all the other photo shoots they had stuff that fit her, and so she's like, "Oh, I look like I work at Home Depot because I'm getting an orange button up and khaki pants." And there's that infamous scene where the person or the wardrobe person is clipping the back of the shirt so it looks like it fits properly. That's a common trick used in modeling where they like pin stuff in the back and whatnot. And you think that it's just like a little clip and she's just overreacting. Apparently it was like a metal clip that like clamped shut on her back, and she had like I believe the clip broke her skin, and so like her reaction isn't as dramatized as was shown. And we see Takara talking to Yaya where she's like, "I'm big, why do you have to keep bringing that up?" And so she's bringing out, and then Jay has a really nice pep talk with her. I think it might have been shown in the recap episode or not, but he's like, "Go out and eat some food, eat this, eat that. And, you know, if they criticize you, eat them too." Aww. Or something like that. And so it was like, oh, that's nice.
Jay, the unsung hero.
Mr.
J. and Miss J. The 2 unsung heroes.
I think some may disagree with that.
Maybe.
With Mr. J.
Maybe. I don't know much. But from what I've seen, it feels like they're the 2 holding everything together. That could be wrong.
Yeah. And I haven't even talked about Cass, or we talked a little bit about Cassie, but
yeah.
All right, Takara, Yaya, then Cassie. Or should it be Takara, Cassie, then Yaya? Because I feel like Yaya, they really mistreated her.
I mean, I will just say that, like, the show really wants it both ways, where, like, it seems to me that they really want to be like, we're diverse. We want to get these points for, like, having a diverse cast, and then they uphold, like, very, like, traditional beauty standards, which always tip towards skinny, tall, white. And it's just, like, anybody who's not, like, in that specific category gets, like, they all get it bad, but it's like they all like suffer almost more because it's like, this is the box that we want to put you in. We're casting you, and then we still want to put you in this box that you're not in. And then it's just like,
yeah, and it's like us showing you, or it's like with Ebony in Cycle 1, because Ebony is a lesbian and she had a girlfriend at the time. Apparently they have broken up, but they have a really good friendship. So it's and side note, a lot of the contestants have married their boyfriends that they had on the show. So it's just like, Cycle 4, Rebecca apparently her then boyfriend, now husband, is like a saint, and I'll explain why later. But Ebony was able to bring in her girlfriend to the top model house, and we were shown that. And it's like, oh, yay, representation. And they show the 2 kissing too. So it's like, oh, and so it's like we're showing these things like, oh, a lot of individuals can relate to that because it's not just like a bunch of tall, thin blondes and brunette white women, or it's like showing more diversity. But then you look at them being like, your skin texture is terrible. You're not that great of a commercial model. What's wrong with you? Oh, and there's also the times when they give them makeup challenges, and then, I remember specifically with Ebony, they had a challenge where they had to imitate one of Tyra's looks makeup wise. And Mr. J's like, Ebony, you're supposed to be a makeup artist, but every single makeup challenge I've given you failed. And Luxeria pointed out that the makeup sponsor for the show was Revlon, and Revlon may not have had products that
For her skin tone.
exactly, and they're saying, "Oh, just put more on," and Lexira, who's also a makeup artist, is like,
It's not how that works.
is like, you can't just cake on more makeup and have it be more prominent. Revlon probably didn't have the makeup that would like fit with Ebony's skin tone, and so it's not Ebony's fault that this is happening.
Yeah,
And
this is something that I, have learned, and it's just like a lot of non-white makeup wearing people have expressed like really struggling to like especially like people with very dark skin, like sometimes like product lines just don't have product for them, which is like kind of insane, right? Because it's just like that's a skin tone that people have.
and it's just like you're minimizing your market when you could be like, oh, let's work with this and expand out, and it'll show more inclusivity. Oh, and another thing that's mentioned a lot in the interviews is that the salons that they go to for makeovers do not know how to handle certain types of hair. And with Ebony, all they had to do was shave her head and they messed it up. And they were joking. They showed it on camera, them joking like, oh, maybe we can write our initials in her hair. And it's just like, so, and a lot of the contestants have talked about how they don't know how to deal with different hairstyles, and they have to like sometimes bring in individuals to work with the hair, and sometimes even then it doesn't really work out. Like Molly from Cycle 16, if you know, you know, but yeah, that was also one of the things that Ebony talked about was them messing up her hair, and all they had to do was shave her head, and they still left like a patch on her head that she had to shave off herself. And
I was mad, like they were trying to make it like, oh, she's overreacting, but like they literally just had to shave her head. Like I would have also been mad. Like everybody else has like these like intricate dyes and all this stuff, and they're just like, whoops, mess it up. And it's just like,
yeah, it was just, a lot of the times I think it was mainly the fault of whomever decided to have the makeovers, because some of the stuff that they did with some of the models' hair, it's just not feasible for their hair.
Yeah.
And there was actually a situation in Cycle 11 where one of the girls' hair started falling out when they started to dye it. So they had to add in, I think they added in extensions or weave, I can't remember. But yeah, we'll talk about that in Cycle 11. But yeah, just with the... I was to Car, then I went to Ebony, then I'm back to Cycle 3. Or I guess we can talk about Cassie, because she didn't last as long as Yaya, but Cassie was the one where she's like, I have bulimia, but I don't think I have disordered eating because I don't throw up after every meal. And and they bring in a plus size model to be like, I wasn't able to, or it was becoming unhealthy for me to live up to these standards. So I left, came back at a healthy weight for me, but it was more geared towards Cassie or it was framed that this whole meeting with the plus size model was more geared towards Cassie and not Takara, because they all have a sit down with Cassie because they're like, oh, does anyone want to talk to us about eating and whatnot? And she basically tells them everything, and they're like, we think you should go to counseling, da-da-da-da-da. And she's like, I don't think I have a problem, so I'm not going to. And then Cassie was like, and then there was the drama where allegedly Cassie told Amanda to not tell anyone about her disordered eating, and Amanda told someone. And so everyone's like, we don't like Amanda now. But apparently during Amanda's Oliver Twixt interview, she's like, I didn't think this was a secret. Because if you do look back on the scene where Cassie's like, don't tell anyone about this, her lip flaps don't match the audio. And so it's just like, oh. And then there's a scene, the episode after Cassie's elimination, where Tyra's sitting in bed with her mom and is like, oh, there was a girl who confided in me that she had an eating disorder and there's nothing I can do about it. And her mom's consoling her, and there's like a single tear coming out of Tyra's eye.
Was that like at the beginning of the next episode?
Yes.
Okay.
And so a lot of people are like, is this staged? Because it's just, or or it's like Tyra wasn't able to help her. Oh, woe is me. Oh, these unrealistic beauty standards. By the way, have you gained a pound? Are you a little bloated? How dare you?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, and now we move on to Yaya, if that's okay.
Yeah. We're at 2 hours and 29 minutes right now.
2-part episode.
Oh, this is going to be multiple parts to get through. Although we can come back to this like later, a little bit later on.
Yeah.
We could talk about Naked and Afraid of Love next week.
I don't really, or I have all the information about Naked and Afraid, but I only have like one kind of big scandal of Naked and Afraid of Love that can be talked about.
And we can do a Naked and Afraid regular.
Okay.
Throw in the of love at the end.
Gosh, I need to show you my notes because I'm just like, because there's a lot. And side note, I had a chat with Tara, Jamie, and Chini when they were doing a Facebook Live, because there's like a fans of Naked and Afraid NXL and a true fans of Naked and Afraid XL. One's private, one's public. And there was one day where they were just having a Q&A and they decided to have they had fans come in and they're like, what is your question? And I'm just like, I want some drama. What did you think about the editing of Naked and Afraid Cell? And they're like, oh my God, we hated it. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, yes.
Nice.
I asked a good question.
I've done my job.
But I felt kind of bad because I was like the last person who asked a question and they were saying like goodbyes and stuff. And I'm just like,
hello.
So I'm just like, thank you for having me. Bye. But I can speak a little bit more on that later during the Naked and Afraid episode that we have. And so I've been watching a lot of episodes recently, and there's a podcast called Oh Heck Nah, where it's NAA for Naked and Afraid by Malu, Beyonce, and Debbie. And I listen to it a lot, and there's some tea in that I want to mention. But going back to... So I just have one more blog to look at for Naked and Afraid, and then I'm ready, but it's a lot.
Take your time. We're good.
But going back to Yaya, one of her few storylines was one that she still has breakouts at 22, and
I was like, girl, I also had breakouts at 20. Isn't that kind of normal?
Yeah, but apparently she was the only one, and so they brought her to a dermatologist, and there's a part where Janice is like, "Oh, you have a few blemishes. Do you have a skin problem?" And she's like, "It's a natural breakout." And Janice is like, "Oh no!" And there's in the beauty shots, they were doing no makeup. I think they did have makeup on though. They put on a little makeup later, but I don't know. But she had to take her makeup off, and she's like, "Oh no, my makeup, or I'm getting my makeup taken away. I'm worried about my skin and stuff like that." And then another part of her storyline was that I believe she went to an Ivy League school, or she went to a very, she's very, or she's very, and she's like, "Oh, I'm learning Portuguese. I've been to France." Like she's traveled a lot.
She's the Respeto one?
Yes, Respeto, which was her trap when Anne defiled. I'm kind of on Anne's side a little bit with the defiled brownies, because all she did was, or I think because I'm a little bit, I don't want to, not triggered, because that's like a very serious term, but because what had happened was when I was in the 4th grade, on the bathroom stalls in the elementary school, there would be people who would like etch in words into the wall and they had to paint over it. I etched in like GO, and I got in-school suspension. I had to clean a wall, and I basically felt like I was one of the worst human beings alive. And the thing was, my bully was the one who ratted me out.
Great.
So I, there are kids who are being menaces and doing all this, and they don't get in trouble. I write GO into paint. And they wanted me to like repaint over it, but and I had to like tearingly apologize to the janitor, who was like the nicest person. He's like, "It's fine." And I'm like, "I'm really sorry for." So when Anne was just like, "Clean your crap," and the brownies, I was like, "That's cool." But I think they thought that she put her fingers in the brownie, and that's why Cassie was so mad. And it's just like, well, clean your dish. That's a prevalent or scene a lot throughout the cycles, is like there's a massive mess in the house. Yeah. And it's just like, just clean it up. And I know Cassie was like, oh no, but then Yaya inserted herself, and she's like, people think it's funny to unalive people. It doesn't mean it's actually funny. And I'm just like,
okay. No, but
like,
I was just laughing
sorry.
because no, I'm sorry. I think I interrupted you.
Oh no, you're good.
No, I was talking about I was talking about that with Daniel, and I hadn't gotten to the episode yet because I was mentioning that so my family's from Portugal. Like I'm trying to be better about actually speaking Portuguese and not just like the batch of words and phrases that I know. And Daniel was like, "Have you seen the Respeto episode?" And I was like, "The what?" And they're like, "The Respeto. It means respect because there's a severe lack of it at this house." And I was like, I saw the episode and I was like, "This is the episode."
Yes, and Yaya kind of inserted herself into that argument, and it's just like, don't touch other people's food. And Cassie was like, don't touch my stuff, because they were like, it's a $6 bag of gluten, or it was a $6 bag of brownies, and it wasn't like ruined or anything, but they figured out it was Anne. And then Anne was like, well, I'm going to tell Tyra that you have an eating or disordered eating. And Cassie's like, I already told her. And it's just like,
yikes.
Production loved it, but it's just like, just clean up your stuff. Like, stop being. Oh, that also reminds me of this time when I was doing an internship for Ace AmeriCorps, where we were living like in an apartment, and the one day I was usually the one who took it upon myself to like clean dishes, but the one day I don't clean dishes, there's like a bunch of dishes, and the person who's kind of in charge of the house, or pretty much everyone is gone except for 3 people, and like 16 people can fit into this location. Mm-hmm. And so the person in charge is like, this is disgusting. You're all getting a housing strike. And me and him and 2 other people have to like clean the entire kitchen. And when we're done, he's like, oh, you helped. I won't be giving you a housing strike. But then the other 2 are like, oh no, it's fine. Give us a housing strike. We could have cleaned it up. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, respeto. Respeto. I don't know why I said it like I was in an anime, but I'm just like, respeto.
Nani?
Nani? Or, omae wa mao shinderu. Nani? But, sorry. Nani? But yes, that happened, and it's just like, the producers were probably loving it, but it's just like, just like, clean up your stuff, please. But Yaya, her, it's interesting, or there's like a parallel that happens later in the cycle with the Umeboshi commercial, because she's talking about respect, but in Japan, it's like they're all about respect. Mm-hmm. You will respect everyone, especially your elders. And during the commercial, and oh gosh, we haven't even gotten into the hat challenge that you haven't seen yet, but it's just like, it's an infamous thing now. But during the Umeboshi scene, where they basically had to be like, hey, or it's just like, hey, you know what I like? Umeboshi. It's pickled plum, and they had to eat it. But with Yaya, she was just kind of like laughing, and she ended up spitting it out, which was seen as really disrespectful. Yes. And so they put her in the bottom 2 for that episode with Nicole, who was the forgettable one. And that's what, and then she was like, Nicole was like, Tyra, you eliminated the model over the actress. But so that I saw the parallels between that, and I was like, oh no, Yaya. You spit out the umeboshi, because pretty much everybody else seemed to have eaten it all, and she was the only one who spit it out. And it was like, but then the most infamous scene for Yaya throughout the entire cycle, there was the theme of Yaya embracing, or I apologize if anything I say is problematic. and it's just, Yaya really embraced her African culture.
Yeah.
And so earlier in that episode, there was a point where people were coming in and being like, this is a great outfit, this is a terrible outfit. And she kind of explained her point of view, because, I can't remember what the individual said, but they're like, oh, I'm seeing a lot of greens and browns or something like that. And she's like, this is how I embrace my culture. These are the cultures that I wear, or the colors that individuals of my culture wear, and I'm embracing that. And so later on in the episode, they have kind of challenge. Sometimes in the earlier cycles, they have challenges in panel where they have to do certain tasks. And for this one was they had to choose a hat and kind of make an outfit based on that. And so one of them was a kente cloth hat.
Okay.
and the judges assumed that Yaya was going to pick that hat, but Yaya chose the cowboy hat, and they were and I think Nole was talking about like, oh, you look like you're like a cowboy girl on safari. I feel like you're gonna go and ride a giraffe. And so she's like, you know what? I chose this hat because it was something unique, something different, and not like that hat because it's more cliche, more stereotypical, more cliche. And I didn't choose that hat because that is very fake material, or it's not authentic material. It's fake she's like fake kente, and Nigel's like, yeah, and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, but I remember what you said. And then the person is like, oh, I feel like you have this need to prove your sort of Africanness, and it gets a little bit overbearing. And you can see Tyra kind of like turn to her like she's gonna say something, but she doesn't. So maybe that might have been out of context the way she was looking at her, but maybe it was like,
or she could have said something that got cut, but like,
yeah, and so it's just kind of like them trying to tell her how she's supposed to express her culture. Yikes. And Tyra kind of puts it, she kind of says it better where she's like, but the outfit that you chose, it's not look at me, it's more look over there. Like she was basically like cutting out the kente cloth hat part and just saying the outfit you chose didn't really stand out. Yeah. But then when Yaya's name is called later in the episode, she's like, she's like, you need to go and eat some humble pie or something like that. And she's like, yes, and I'm sorry for the way I came off and stuff like that. And she's like, you know what, you need to come back here. You know, you looked in that hat and it smelled like Dookie, and you need to be more humble and something like that. And it's just like, I think you have to see the clip to understand it more. I'm doing a very bad job, but it's basically Tyra saying you need to like tone down your personal style to fit into the mold that we're giving you, kind of thing, because we don't understand. Or my interpretation is they don't understand, and it's like, we don't understand what you're doing. This is too much, so you need to stop doing that.
I was sitting here the whole time you were telling the story and the lead up being like, how is the hat gonna become problematic?
Yeah, or it's not the hat, it's just her like sassing the hat is the problematic part that they focused on. And it's just like, but it and I remember during the Ghosty challenge, someone's like, oh, Yaya is a very unique name. And she's like, actually, it's very popular in West Africa. And then there's just like it cuts to her looking at the designers and their silence. And like, I think they have a sound effect like crickets or something, but they made it look like, oh, she's bringing it up again kind of thing, or planting the seeds of like, oh, she's doing this. She's not humble. She's in your, I don't know.
It's so strange because like the girl, like whenever they have like the girl who's like the Southern girl or the whatever, like everybody has something on a reality show that's like, you know, a part of their personality that the producers choose to keep cutting into. And it's just like, they don't say that to other people, right? Like, it just seems disrespectful to her specifically and her culture specifically, because they don't say that to other people when they're just like, when they keep cutting back to like the one thing that they're trying to boil down their personality to with an edit or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Oh, or going back to the edit and whatnot, there's also the problematic moment where the girls are questioning Amanda's retinus pigmentosa with the runway, which apparently in Amanda's Oliver Twix interview, apparently all the other girls snuck a peek at the runway, but because of the way that Amanda's retinus pigmentosa works is that she's completely night blind, and she has a very limited field of vision. So she's like, hey, so I can be on par with everybody else because I can't really see it, because she didn't know that, or she knew that it was going to be dark in there because I think they were at like a nightclub, but she didn't know. She wanted to like see the runway so she can make sure she doesn't fall off or whatnot. And so, and luckily there was like glitter on the runway, so she's like, that saved me. And so later on, she's like, oh, I made the mistake of telling Miss J, or asking Miss J, so you heard about my eyes, right? And she showed her cane to Miss J and is like, oh, I should have hit you with this when you weren't walking that great. And people were saying that Amanda was using her retinitis pigmentosa as an excuse to get ahead when she's just trying to get on the same level, because it's like with Mercedes and her lupus, where it's like, oh, she fought through, or you need to fight through your chronic illness so you can be on the same level as everyone else, and we're not going to conform to you or your disease and make it like just so it's like not as hard for everyone else. So that was also a little problematic, the way a lot of the models reacted.
Yeah, fairness doesn't mean everybody gets the same thing. It means everybody gets what they need. And if you have a condition where you cannot see, you might just need to have a previs so that you're not going to fall.
Yeah, and maybe production was like, oh, she might fall, kind of thing. Oh, and also there is some controversy that I remember seeing on Reddit or somewhere where the theory is that Amanda initially didn't make the final 20, because there was a point where, well, I don't know if this is true or not. This is all alleged, where if you look at the list of the final 20, apparently Amanda's name isn't on there at first. And there's another contestant by the name of like Sarah whose name is on there, but later on, Sarah, they scroll down the name of the list and you can see Amanda's name there and not Sarah's or something. And people were thinking maybe Sarah made it into the house, but she dropped out last minute. And maybe for a little bit of a storyline, they had Amanda reveal that she's legally blind and may become completely blind later, kind of thing. And I think maybe that revelation is what like pushed her up into the house when the other model maybe dropped out. So
that's interesting.
That's an interesting thing. It's all alleged, but
that's also not her fault. That's just the producers being like, we can exploit this person's trauma for a storyline.
Exactly. And Amanda talks about how she was set up with certain things, like saying, well, or like when she's like, Elijah was like, or Elijah was conceived on 9/11 or something like that. Yeah. Like she said she was set up for that really bad. I don't know. I can't remember if it was like a joke but she was set up for that. And it's just like, what?
I had that. It just comes out of nowhere where she's like, he was conceived to the hour on 9/11. And I'm just like, girl, what?
Yeah. Apparently she's like, oh yeah, they got me, gal. But again, really watch the Oliver Twixt interview with Amanda. I know I keep going back to it, but yeah. And then for some reason, Amanda's storyline became she's not showing enough emotion, or she's not editorial enough for them, even though they're like, oh my gosh, your eyes are so beautiful. You're a beautiful beauty model.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with Amanda is her eyes. Like that's the first thing that we hear them say about her is just like, oh my God, her eyes are gorgeous. Because they are. They're really, really pretty. They're like a really light blue.
Yes. And they gave her like the super blonde makeover that wasn't really ice blonde, but might have been. And she had this transformation and she was like the mom of the house. But then the house turned against her because she revealed the information about Cassie that might or might not have been a secret. And it's just like, I really wanted Amanda to win when I was first watching, but I think that the top 3 of Cycle 3 was a very strong group of top model. And it's always interesting when they're like, this is the best top 3 we've ever had, but they say that every cycle. So the previous cycles models are like, well, F my drag kind of thing. That's a RuPaul's Drag Race quote.
I need to watch once I finish binging Top Model. My next reality show endeavor will probably be RuPaul's Drag Race, because
Oh, good luck. Because there are 15 seasons of America's RuPaul's Drag Race, 8 seasons of All Stars, 4 seasons of UK, 2 seasons of Down Under, 1 of France, 1 of Belgium, 1 of Sweden, 2 of Thailand. Thailand deserves better. 2 of Holland. Mexico's Drag Race is coming out soon. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. There's also UK versus the world, and there's also there's 4 seasons of Canada. No, 3 seasons of Canada. Yeah, 3 seasons of Canada, a season of Canada versus the world. There is a lot. I can also talk a lot about that because there's a lot of problematic moments.
So you're saying if we did a big video for the channel being like, we watched every episode of RuPaul's Drag Race with like all of the posters like behind us, You're saying we'd get views on that video?
We would probably get views, and we would have enough content for a good many months. because oh gosh, there's like 12 episodes per season, or 12 to 14 episodes per season. Oh, and it was really funny because season 1 of Drag Race is so different from recent Drag Race. And the first season of Drag Race, RuPaul made the suggestion to put Vaseline on the camera lenses.
Oh yeah, that's a thing that Spencer has told me that people do.
Yeah, and so that kind of helped, because in later seasons, people are talking about how they blur RuPaul's hairline. So I guess it kind of helps with the makeup blending when you put Vaseline over, because it's just it makes everything.
It's like an old Hollywood trick where they used to use it for like close-up glamour shots and stuff, because it was just so it gives it the camera like that glowy, like almost not airbrush look, but just it gives it that very like photo finish glamorous kind of effect.
Well, they used it the entire season, so it's just kind of like, oh okay,
in the first season.
Yeah,
it's like, who dropped the camera in Vaseline?
Exactly. Oh no, all of our cameras conveniently dropped in Vaseline. What do? We have to film. Okay, oh no, we have to wipe it up. Oh no, we can't. It's continuity. Oh, and side note, one of the extras that I worked with on the show that I was core on was actually on season 2 of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Ooh.
And I don't want to mention too much, because I don't know if it's okay that I mention them, but I'm just like, I got to know them, and they talked about like behind the scenes stuff. Like, yeah, they didn't really feed us. There were like leading questions with production. Yikes. They were saying things, but it was fun.
Yikes. Well, since we've been filming for almost 3 hours.
I feel like that we've covered almost all the...
all of the things.
Almost all the contestant / problematic moments for the cycle. Side note, there was the fight between Eva and Anne, where Anne was like, I kind of hope Narelle goes home, or Eva wanted Narelle to go home, and Anne called Narelle fat, and Narelle's like, oh my gosh, one friend wants me to go home, the other one thinks I'm fat. Are mom and dad getting a divorce? That was also one of the big things of the cycle 3, and
that's not. It's not funny that they called her fat, but it is. That's just our mom and dad getting a divorce.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny. But yeah. We'll have to revisit this in future podcast episodes, just because there's so much.
Yeah,
much of it.
We probably need to go cycle by cycle, because cycle 4, even though cycle 6 is regarded as the best cycle 4 is the most dramatic cycle.
Yeah.
And you'll figure out why later.
You showed me the video that we filmed is from 4, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was apparently something similar happened to another contestant on that cycle.
Uh-oh.
I don't think the results were as tragic, but there was kind of something that happened, and one of the contestants kind of faced a similar scenario that we will discuss next time we talk about America's Next Top Scandal Girl.
Scandal Girl. Not Scandival.
Oh, God. That's a whole other bunch of podcasts.
A whole other bunch. You gotta go you gotta go in chronological order. It's like, and then this, and then this, and then and you're like, oh no. No. Oh,
and apparently it might have already come out by now, but apparently with Scandival, there's another revelation that's so big, a lot of the cast members are told to not sign their contracts yet until they hear this revelation that only the showrunner knows about.
Ooh.
So thank you all for tuning in. And if there's something I missed, please tell me with America's Next Top Model.
Thank you for listening / watching. If you're with us on YouTube, then you're seeing the video version. But hopefully you enjoyed if you saw it here on YouTube or in any of the other places that you can get your podcasts. Thank you for being here. Do all the things.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like and comment, subscribe.
Write a review.
Yeah, rate us. Is that a thing? Or like rating?
Yeah, you can.
I'm very new to podcast world as like a creator.
Yeah, please give us 5 stars and maybe write a little note for us. Nice, please.
Yeah, if it's not nice, we're criers. We don't want to hear it.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding.
Make sure to follow Avery on Avery Talks About Stuff, our YouTube channel, and I'm featured there. And please follow me on YouTube, Gabe Custic. I mainly show a lot of Digimon footage. There's also one America's Next Top Model video, a few Jurassic Park videos. Fun times.
But thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, wait. Don't we need to go to somewhere in 2003 on the TARDIS?
We do need to go to somewhere in 2003. Wait, what happened in 2003?
Wait, before we go, the Smize has stopped.
Oh, no, wait. Tyra Banks showed up personally and was like, no.
Stop it. I was rooting for you.
We were all rooting for you.
You need to go somewhere else in 2003 and find something important that happened that is more interesting than George Bush passing out from choking on a pretzel.
That was 2002, I think.
That was during the Room podcast, right?
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah.
Let's see. What happened? What happened that's not depressing?
Oh, the Human Genome Project.
Oh my god. What happened in history? I don't really care that it was this day.
Oh.
No.
That's depressing.
That's depressing. Hang
you
on.
can't see, but it's depressing.
Let's say...
Remember to smize, everybody. Smile with your eyes. And shout out to all the contestants of America's Next Top Model. You're amazing. I'm sorry a lot of individuals from the show have to go to therapy and all that jazz. You're all awesome. I'm sorry if anything I said came off harsh.
Whoa, 2003 was a loaded year for movies. The first Pirates came out, Finding Nemo came out, Matrix Reloaded came out, and the final installment of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Return of the King, came out.
I keep forgetting that the Lord of the Rings trilogy was like one year after the other because I feel like the distance or the length of time between the first and second was so long, but it was just a year. So, hey, why don't we see Adrian Brody and Halle Berry kiss and then go see Return of the King in theater?
I think that's a great idea. Let's go do that.
Yeah.
Yay!
Where's the lighting?
Why doesn't it work? It doesn't ever.
Come on, TARDIS. We need to see Halle Berry and Adrian Brody kiss and Return of the King.
Well, it's doing something for a second, and now it's not. If I was a doctor, my big thing would be the TARDIS hates this doctor.
Oh no! Yeah, it doesn't like your Yay! Bye. Whoa.